Welcome to the 2024 gear breakdown with myself and Nate. In this video, Nate and I are going to go over the gear, at least the majority of the gear that we use throughout the 2024 fall hunting season. Some of the things will not be included because the truth is, at least from my end of things, there's a lot of overlap from 2024 and 2023. And so if something's missing in 2024, it's because I've already covered it in the 2023 breakdown video that I did last year. So if you're interested in that stuff, you can go check out last year's video. This year, we're primarily going to focus on more of the things that were new to the both of us in 2024, as well as some overlap stuff that we feel like might need some reiteration or some emphasis on our use. So the first thing that we're going to start out with is our packs. But when it comes to these gear review videos, I understand that it's often a very long video, so if you're interested in only one specific topic, you can either go to the description below, where I'll have timestamps marked out for you, or on the screen right now, there's your timestamps that you can skip to if you want to just learn about our rifles that we use, or our packs, or our clothing system, whatnot. You can go about it, but the first thing that we're going to talk about is our backpacks, because in my honest opinion, I think backpacks are the core and the foundation to any backcountry Western hunter, and without a good backpack, you're not taking gear out in the field with you. So we're going to start with our backpacks, and this year we were fortunate enough to test out a brand new pack for the both of us, which is the Initial Ascent backpack system. Initial Ascent just released this new pack last year. They've had other, I guess, a Generation 1 model pack for a few years, and then last year they came out with this system, which in my hands, this is the IA 5K pack, and Nate has the...
I got the IA 8K.
So when it comes to the name, the name itself simply tells you how big the bag is. So the IA 5K, which is right here in the wolf gray color, it stands for the pack being 5,000 cubic inches. Same with the 8K, meaning that the bag is 8,000 cubic inches.
Yeah.
In my honest opinion, when you can go for a bigger bag, that's typically where I would lean. But in this case, I wanted to test out a 5K just to see how effective the 5K is. I think when you chose the 8K, you didn't realize how big the 8K was.
Yeah, this thing's a monster. It packs down really nicely, though, which is a great advantage of a large pack. And these actually both sit a little north of their rating. So the 5K comes in with the floater pocket on top included at 5,200 cubic inches, and the 8K is at 8,600 cubic inches. So this is actually closer to a
huge pack.
It's a huge pack. So as long as you want to go, pretty much you're good.
Yeah, so in terms of the pack, the main difference is simply the size. But when it comes to the features, pocket design, pocket layouts, the bags are essentially twins. It's just that this one just has a larger capacity. There might be some little tweaks. For example, if you turn your pack on the side for a second, because the pack is so big, on the 8K, it has 3 side straps, whereas on the 5K, because the bag's not as tall, I only have 2. So there's one down here, and there's one here. But in terms of functionality, like, there's not really anything too different, because if we turn it on the back side, both of these packs, including the 3K, are all attached to one single frame. So this is the same exact frame as this one. You can simply just swap out the bags if you want a bigger bag like Nate's or a mid-sized bag like mine. And when it comes to Western backpacks, your frame is everything. I don't care how good your bag design is, how many features it has. If your frame is not comfortable, the bag is obsolete. So I'll let you start with it, with your personal experience of how you like the frame this year.
Yeah, I haven't used every bag in the market, but you know, of the bags that I have used, I used a Stone Glacier Sky Archer prior to this, and I've used Exos before. As far as carrying heavy loads out, this bag takes the cake, in my opinion. The way that it holds the meat on the meat shelf, on the pannier system, closer to your center of gravity. I really appreciate the simple bag design. I always liked Stone Glaciers because they don't have a ton of extra pockets. This kind of follows that same suit. There's a few interior separation components, but more or less it's one big bag, which I really like. And I also really like the fact that it has the exterior spotting scope pocket. For me, I can fit a camera with a big lens and a tripod in there, or you can fit, you know, extra layers if that's not your thing. But so far, this bag was phenomenal to carry weight with throughout the season.
Yeah, I mean, we've tested this pack from the high country of Washington in August all the way through November, and even in my part, December for me, late season hunts. So for me personally, I've used just about all the high-end backpacks out there. I'm not super up to date with some of the newer releases. For example, I know Kuiu just came out with the arc frame. I have no experience with that, but I have experience with the duplex light and whatnot. And the biggest thing I can say about this frame is kind of just reiterating what Nate said. This frame, in all honesty, has carried the best weight for me because the rigidity of this frame is unmatched. But at the same time, even though the frame is really sturdy in terms of vertical, it's still flexible enough so that when you're twisting and turning, going over logs and deadfall, it still has enough flex horizontally where your back isn't restricted on movement. That's just speaking on the frame itself. The other thing I want to touch on is the lumbar pad on the initial Ascent. The initial Ascent has essentially an oversized lumbar pad compared to like an EXO or a Stone Glacier or a Kuiu. And I was a little skeptical at it at first because it just looked a little obnoxious. But when I actually used it, it actually was very good because it's a 2 foam layering system. So with the lumbar pad, so they have a soft part which goes up against your back, and then behind that soft piece, there's a denser lumbar pad where it prevents your back from actually hitting the frame itself. So that 2-piece system with the lumbar pad has actually helped yield in comfort because the lumbar pad, even when you only have like a day pack, like 20 pounds, it feels like any other pack. But when you start carrying heavy loads, like 80, 90, 100 pounds, this lumbar pad, even though it's oversized, when you have all that weight, it compresses it to a point where for me, it fits my back perfectly.
Very well.
So that's the biggest thing that I wanted to touch on because the frame is one thing, but I think the lumbar pad is the second thing that goes right behind the frame. Obviously, you have a waist belt here and the yoke system here. They both work.
Another huge advantage to this pack that I've found is when you fill all your accessory pockets, your water bottle pouch, your spotter scope pouch, you don't sacrifice interior bag space.
Yes.
As were other packs, if you pack your main compartment of your bag tight with gear, good luck fitting in a water bottle or a spotter scope and getting it easily accessible. This one, they give just a really nice kind of maybe a looser feel that allows you to actually use both the full pack for like especially on the 8K for like a longer expedition style hunt, as well as all your accessory pockets.
Yeah, and speaking on accessories, Initial Ascent has a lot of accessories. They got bowl holders, rifle carriers. In my case, I have their large hip belt pouch, and I also have their Nalgene bottle holster. I love them. Nate, I believe, has the smaller or the regular size hip belt pouch. The reason why I opt for the bigger one is because I just carry a lot of stuff, and I just like having extra room. The Nalgene holster, this thing is slick because the size dimensions that they have sewn that accessory to is like perfect for a normal size Nalgene bottle.
Yeah, and it's kind of has this semi-rigid design where when you're reaching a little bit behind you to put your Nalgene bottle in or whatever, your Yonder bottle, is already formed to the water bottle. So you're not trying to, it's not a two-hand thing to try and hold the water bottle pouch open and slip the water bottle in with the other hand. So it's really easy access when you're hiking.
Yeah, it's not folding because it's holding its shape.
Right.
So that's one thing that we have for accessories. In between the frame and the bag, we have the load pannier, which is essentially a flap that you can sandwich the meat of your animal that you just harvested to the frame. And so you can actually use the load pannier without the bag and still be able to transport meat out if that's how you want to do it, because the load pannier itself acts kind of like a bag itself without the extra room or extra weight of the bag. Neither of us have strictly used a pannier because every time we've packed out an animal, it's always been with camp. So like you can't just ditch your bag with your camp and then pack out the meat. So even despite that, the pannier itself helps with simply getting the load to sit right on the frame. And then once you have that meat sitting right on the frame, you simply just throw the bag over, and then you don't have this random awkward load of your meat hanging out on one side.
Yeah, the meat is not dependent on the bag to help keep it in position.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I want to point out, because there are other competitors out there where your bag is the only thing that's keeping that meat from moving. And sometimes, especially when your bag is full of gear and camp, you can't get that bag to cinch correctly because like there's awkward spots in your bag. So that's the one thing I want to give a plus to on the initial Ascent. And so we understand it's a very expensive pack, but with what Nate and I do from August through November and December, like we demand the best of the best when it comes to the packs. And again, I've dabbled with essentially all the high-end packs out there, and I think I can say this with 100% honesty, this is probably the best pack overall. It doesn't win all the categories, but overall, it's the best pack that I have used, especially when it comes to packing out heavy loads.
Heavy loads, yeah. And a side note, just something that Initial Ascent did that I've been waiting for a long time is with their rain covers. Their rain cover fits a 8,600 cubic inch pack loaded to the brim with a little extra space. You're never tight on stretching it over, which is really nice because when the rain comes and it comes quick, their rain covers just work fantastic.
Yep. Yeah, so that's just a little overview of the Initial Ascent. Before we end this segment, I want to touch on some of the accessories that I use on my pack, and this is not specific to Initial Ascent. So how I carry my rifle, this is probably my number one question. How do you carry your rifle? Because a lot of people see me carrying my rifle under my armpit. And so I don't have it on my pack right now, but what I use is called the Kafaro Gun Bearer. And essentially it's a two-piece system where you have a sleeve that attaches to your hip belt, and that's where the butt of your rifle goes. And then on your shoulder strap, there's another piece where it wraps around either the fore end of your stock or your barrel, depending on how tall or short your rifle is. It's like a clip-on. So you clip it on and it secures it, but the moment you need your rifle, you simply pull on the tab, it breaks it off, and then you can just slide your rifle out, which is a very slick system. Nate has not the Kafaro Gun Bearer, but it's something very similar.
Yeah, it's similar idea. Butt of your rifle goes in here. I have actually a strap back right here. Goes around the barrel or the chassis of your rifle, goes into this quick attach. It sits right there under your armpit, and then it's got you just kind of pull on the tab.
It's like a pull release.
Yeah, pull release. Really easy, quick access, comfortable for hiking.
Yes, and so that's one accessory I wanted to touch on because I personally prefer the gun bearer system over any type of traditional sling, or in some cases just carrying your rifle by hand. That's miserable to me. Another thing I want to touch on for Nate and I both is our Peak Design camera clip carrier. Both Nate and I, we carry cameras, so he usually carries a DSLR of some kind to take photography and some B-roll shots sometimes. I carry it not because I have a DSLR, but I use it for my GoPro. So my GoPro is often my secondary angle. And so I have my GoPro strapped on here, and then my tripod, which I'm holding in hand, is usually carrying my main camera that I'm recording my hunts on.
Yeah.
And so for the most part, that's really the pack system. I don't know if we missed anything, but for the most part, I think this is a pack that everybody should look into if you're looking at the top of the top packs. I understand there's a lot of other packs. I will touch on one pack that I did also use. I used the new Mystery Ranch Metcalf 75, and for what it is, it's a good pack. It's not on the same tier or the same level as the Initial Ascent in both performance, functionality, but at the same time, that's also because you're paying a lot less for the Mystery Ranch pack. I don't have it with me today because I just prefer the Initial Ascent. Next up, we're going to talk about our rifles. This year, Nate used 2 rifles. I used primarily 2 rifles. I do not have my rimfire with me, but we just want to touch on the big stuff here. So we're going to touch on the 2 rifles in front of us, and then we'll come back and touch on these 2 rifles because the 2 in front of us are the ones that we use the least out of the whole season, and so those are going to fly by a little bit more. So I'm going to remove this rifle off the table for a second to prevent confusion, and I want to touch on this rifle while Nate touches on that rifle. So Nate, what do you have in front of you?
So this is a Springfield Waypoint model 2020. It's chambered in .308. It's got a 20-inch barrel, and this was really my first precision rifle. Still a stock rifle. It's not a custom build, but this thing is a fantastic shooter. I used this fall primarily on my bear hunting. This is what I harvested my bear with back in August. And a couple overviews of the rifle is the Backlands carbon bipod. This I can attribute my success in 2023 from my Oregon mule deer to this bipod almost significantly.
Which is that guy right there.
Yeah, which is this little guy. And that wasn't on film, the portion of me shooting, but its ability to cant, and it has spring-loaded lever design. This is a small company based out of New Zealand. They are fantastic. This is their flagship product. Comes in at 4 or 5 ounces, extremely lightweight. Out of this, I am shooting, I forgot what I'm shooting.
Well, so the thing he forgets because this thing shoots everything so well, he can't make up his mind on what to shoot. So last year with the Bear, you shot the Barnes 150 grain TTSX, which is a monolithic bullet. But on the flip side, this thing shoots the American whitetails, the Hornady American whitetails, and those things are mad cheap.
They are.
For the factory ammo.
$32 for a 20-round box.
Like $50 a box.
And this will consistently shoot half MOA or better with the American whitetail.
Yeah, so I don't think Nate has finalized what he wants to shoot out of this rifle because the TTSX and the American whitetail, which shoots the interlock bullet, like Nate is 5-shot touching at 100 yards on both of them. So really, this rifle is an absolute shooter. What do you have topped on it?
So this is the Vortex Razor HD LHT 4.5 to 22 by 50, and that's a common theme through my rifles. This is a knockout scope for me. It has great range of magnification, extremely crisp. It does have an illuminated reticle. I have not used that much. And then on top of the scope, as you will also see as a common theme throughout our rifles, is the Kestrel glassing systems throw lever. Another thing that I can attribute a large portion of success in our hunts to, or in my hunts to at least, is the ability to get good target acquisition on your targets after firing initial rounds. As most scopes come, they have the magnification ring, which has a little raised kind of knurled portion on it, but the throw lever allows you to keep your target, not focus on your range of magnification, and just go throw up the lever.
Yeah, the throw lever, it just allows you for quicker maneuvering of zooming in and zooming out. Personally, for me, when I was doing my solo hunt last year in 2023, my big mule deer, when you're hunting alone and you don't have somebody spotting real time and telling you what happened to the animal, the ability to shoot when you're zoomed in and then zoom right back out to follow through, that can be the difference between you knowing exactly what happened and you having no idea what happened. Fortunately, when I shot my deer, like the shot was good, so I watched the deer roll in my scope, which I knew I hit him. If there's one piece of gear out of everything that we're about to talk to that I say is the most underrated, without a doubt, it's the throw lever.
Absolutely.
If you do not have a throw lever on your scope, you're missing out because, as we can see here, with that raised tab, it takes one finger, like your thumb, to move the whole magnification in and out. Whereas if you don't have that, you're literally having to take entire hand to like zoom in and zoom out, which you're just that much slower. And as anybody who hunts knows, sometimes hunting is all about those milliseconds, the second or the 2 seconds, where that's the difference between you getting a shot off or you don't get a shot off. So that's and then just obviously we have a little Vortex Low Pro bubble level on there. And
always got to make sure your gun's level.
Yeah, so that's the Springfield Waypoint 2020 from Nate, and Nate has shot this rifle for about 2 years.
Yep.
2 years.
Seasons.
And then for me, on the other hand, this is the rifle that I used to also take my bear this year, opening day bear. This is the Weatherby Mark V Live Wild Edition. So this is Remy Warren's signature series rifle with Weatherby. This rifle is chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. This is my first actual Magnum rifle. Full disclosure, big shout out to Remy Warren and Weatherby for hooking me up. I did not buy this rifle, so I just had the privilege of testing out this rifle. And for this rifle, I'm actually shooting just factory loads. And this rifle is not super dialed in yet because I just did not have the time that I wanted to get behind this rifle, because when I got this rifle, it was already so close to hunting season. I didn't have the proper time to put it through the paces that I normally put any rifle that I get through. So I've stuck to factory ammo. I've only tested 3 so far. I tested the American Whitetail 180 grain, the Nosler 180 grain AccuBonds, and the Federal Terminal Ascent 200 grain here. I went with the Terminal Ascent because those shot the best out of this rifle. Granted, the Nosler and the Hornady shot well too. These just shot better. And the truth is, I was really intrigued by the Terminal Ascent bullet, so I just opted for the Terminal Ascent. So I took my black bear at 325 yards with this load right here and this rifle, and the bear went like 50 yards. Didn't go very far. Granted, it was a big bear, but that's the rifle. Everything about it is factory except for the fact that Nate and we installed this little cheek riser just because the scope was a little raised up. So I just wanted a little bit better line of sight through the scope. What I have topped here is I have the new Vortex Viper HD 5-25 by 50 rifle scope. Vortex, they just released that scope last year in 2024, so I was one of the lucky people to actually get to use all the models or the configurations of the Viper HD, and so I wanted to test it out. And again, I shot my bear with it. 5-25, it's a lot of zoom, but for a 300 Win Mag, you're often wanting to reach out there a little bit, so having that extra zoom, it just helps with target acquisition a little bit better. And then lastly, I have this with the Atlas V8 BT10 bipod. This is actually my second one. I have my other one attached to my Oregon Mountain Rifle 7 PRC. So that's my configuration. I wish I would have had more time to hunt with it, but I didn't. But all you guys need to know is both of these rifles, if we just had to hunt with them, I don't think either of us would hesitate at all.
No.
So with that said, we're going to take these rifles off and then swap it out to the actual rifles we were using for the majority of the 24 season. And so I'm going to leave this box of ammo here because I'm also shooting the Terminal Ascent out of this. But we'll start with you.
Yeah, so this is the Oregon Mountain Rifle.
It's custom.
Yes, custom, chambered in 7 PRC. What's cool about this rifle is not too long ago, well, there's a lot of things cool about this rifle, but not too long ago, Oregon Mountain Rifle started producing their own stocks. So this is Oregon Mountain Rifle sawtooth stock. It's carbon fiber, 20-inch carbon fiber barrel, and we get a lot of questions. There's a lot of similar configured carbon fiber stocks out on the market. It's not too far off of the stock off of my Springfield 2020 Waypoint. The other neat thing about this rifle, it is my first rifle I've ever had that is chambered left-handed action. So I'm a lefty. I grew up learning how to shoot right-handed, losing target acquisition because I had to pull away from the scope, and I don't have to do that anymore with this rifle. And this thing has shot lights out for me this season. On the top, I have a Silencer Central Banish 30. This barrel has a 5/8 24 threaded barrel, as well as my 2020 Waypoint. So this Banish 30 goes back and forth between both of my rifles. For the bipod, this is Backlands' newest bipod. This is the Precision Alpine bipod. It is a fantastic bipod again. It's very versatile. You can exchange either the spring-loaded feet, like my other one, or you can just have the threaded and cut a little bit of weight. As out of this, I am shooting the Federal Premium ELD-X 175 grain, and just for a little bit of scope, it's shooting about 2,900 feet a second. So 2893 was my average.
2893 out of a 7 PRC out of a 20-inch barrel.
Yeah. If you're in the gun community, if you follow the 7 PRC and its arc throughout the firearms community, in general, a very lightweight backcountry firearm paired with 7 PRC does not always produce the best accuracy.
Yes.
That has not at all been my experience with this rifle. In this load, I've been shooting factory ammo, obviously, and round .75 MOA. This is the rifle that I took my Oregon Blacktail with this year at 400 yards. It's a fantastic rifle.
Yeah.
It's topped with the same Vortex Razor LHT 4.5-22 by 50, the same bubble level, and the same throw lever from Kestrel Glassing Systems.
Yep, and since we're on Oregon Mountain Rifle, I've been getting a lot of messages. Where's your 7 PRC at? There's nothing has happened to my 7 PRC. I still have my Oregon Mountain Rifle, but I will touch on the 7 PRC because that's a topic. So 2023, which is the year I got my Oregon Mountain Rifle 7 PRC, I'm shooting the Hornady Precision Hunter factory loads, and the 2023 batches of ammo shot lights out. That's why I took it hunting. I took my mule deer and my blacktail deer with it. 425 yards essentially for both deer, and smoked them. 2024, I ran out of ammo, so I went to go buy the Hornady Precision Hunter ammo again, and I don't know what was going on with the Hornady loads from 2024, but they were not shooting well. I was getting like 2 MOA out of my rifle, and so when you're going from like 0.4 MOA to a 2 MOA group, there's something drastically is off. And so I went and I looked at my rifle, torqued everything, made sure everything was good, and it still wasn't shooting well. I took that same batch of ammo, we put it in your rifle. It shot better, but it's still like kissing 1 MOA.
Yeah.
We put in the federal loads, and those things are like 5 bullet touching at 100 yards. So I don't know what was going on with Hornadies and the Precision Hunter loads, but it wasn't performing well for me. So that's why my 7 PRC took a back seat in 2024 season. But in terms of what happened to it, I still have it. It's just that the loads, they weren't shooting well.
Not to the rifle's fault.
Yeah, not to the rifle's fault, at least from my experience. I could be wrong, but just seeing how it shot in 2023, changing ammo and then seeing how it shot in 2024, I'm willing to lean on the idea that it's the ammo's fault and not necessarily the rifle's fault. So with that said, I'm going to jump into what I used in lieu of my 7 PRCs. So this is actually my Savage 110 Ultralite rifle. So I got my Savage 110 Ultralite rifle back in 2022, and I took 2 elk with it, my biggest bull elk, my Oregon Roosevelt elk, and my Washington mule deer with it. And this is chambered in 6.5 PRC. And what I did to my 110 Ultralite this year is I swapped out the factory stock and I put on the MDT Hunt 26 chassis. That's the only thing I've really done to it. And then I guess I've also swapped out the muzzle brake for a suppressor. We'll get to that momentarily. So the reason why I went with the MDT Hunt 26 chassis is because it's one of the lightest chassis that you can find on the market. There's also the XLR Element Magnesium chassis. Just wanted to try the MDT Hunt 26, and honestly, I can say that it's a solid chassis. Anybody that's looking to upgrade into a chassis, it's hyped up for a reason, and I can see why it's hyped up, and I can also say now, after using it for a full season, I'm also on the hype train. It's a solid chassis. It's a great chassis, very lightweight, shoots great. Really no complaints about the chassis at all. I have the Vortex Razor LHT 3 to 15 by 50 MRAD scope, and like Nate, I have myself a Kestrel Glassing Systems throw lever because it's...
If you don't got one, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about this lever. And just also a little bit of background for it. The reason why I like it so much is because John Lucas over at Kestrel Glassing System, he built it to exactly how I wanted it, because the thing with the Razor LHT is they have this awkward knob on it, and it makes it so that you can't put any universal throw lever on it. So I went to John Lucas because that dude is an engineering mastermind, and I told John, I was like, hey, I would really love a throw lever for my Razor LHT. And so I gave him all the specs, and he gave me a couple prototypes, finalized on this one. And so like this throw lever is exactly how I would want a throw lever built, and that's what we have here. So I can't recommend this throw lever enough. You can check it out at KestrelGlassingSystems.com, and you can use my code SY10 to save you some cash. That's the biggest thing that I can say out of all the rifle builds that I love the most about it. So again, to finalize on my rifle, for my suppressor, I am shooting the Aero Precision Lahar 30K suppressor. It's one of the more affordable suppressors out there, but because it's more affordable, you're sacrificing a little bit more weight, so it's a little heavier than the Banish 30, but it shoots lights out, and it does a really good job at not only reducing recoil, but obviously sound reduction as well. For my bipod, this is actually a very interesting bipod, because this is probably my favorite bipod sub $100. So the thing about the MDT Hunt 26 chassis is it comes factory ready for either Arca Swiss or M-Lock compatibility bipods. So my Atlas is Picatinny, so I couldn't put the Atlas on here. So I went with the M-Lock, and this is the UTG Recon 360 bipod. And as the name implies, since it's 360, you can turn almost any direction. Whereas like with some other bipods, it's unilateral. You're either doing horizontal or you're doing vertical. This thing, if you need a awkward diagonal shot, you can do it with this bipod because it's a ball head rather than like a plated mount like the Backlands or my Atlas here. My only gripe about this bipod is I just wish it was spring loaded, so like when I go to press it, like the legs don't just fly out like a Harris or like the Backlands or my Atlas. But again, for sub $100, I can't knock on it too much. But that's the setup itself. Again, with this rifle, I'm also shooting the Federal Terminal Ascent. Not the 200 grain, but the 130 grain 6.5 PRC. loads out of this rifle, and that thing is shooting lights out. I've shot out to 600 yards with that setup, and it's dinging the plates out there. So really love this rifle, really love the loads. Can't really say enough about my rifle and obviously the Oregon Mountain Rifle.
Yeah, it was a great season for rifles.
Yeah, great season. So that's our rifles. Obviously, again, we used some other rifles, but for the bread and butter of what we used, that's what we used for 2024. Next up, we're going to talk about optics and what we used in 2024. Obviously, Nate has his own bino harness system set up. I have my own. I'm going to let Nate start with his.
So this is the Vortex Pro Pack. This is my late season configuration right now because I don't have the handgun on the bottom. I have the hand muff, which I will go over very shortly here. Really have loved it. Through most of the season, I actually used a marsupial gear bino harness, as I have for multiple years in the past. Recently switched over to the Vortex Pro Pack. It's been a great one so far. It has the forward open. It's not a magnetic latch. It is more of an elastic framed to pull over your binos, which I really appreciate. On this side, I have the Vortex Razor 4000 GHB rangefinder. And then on this side is just your little accessory pouch. I like to keep, for most of the seasons, an elk cow call and maybe some windicator, things like that, a lens cloth in here. The late season configuration portion is down here. Vortex has the hand muff. And let me tell you, as my experience has not included hand muffs up to this year, this is a game changer.
Yeah.
I get cold hands, as many people I think probably do, but you throw a hand warmer in here, late season shed hunting, late season hunts, you can put your hands in there in between glassing or while hiking, and it is just really a great addition. Extremely light. In my bino harness, I carry for most of the season the Razor UHD 10x42 binos. I find that for eastern Washington, Idaho, Oregon, western Montana, those areas that we mostly hunt, the 10x42 is a great do-it-all magnification optic. Sometimes I do wish I had the 12X. Sometimes hunting timber, it'd be nice to have the 8X. But as far as picking one optic to always have in my bino harness, the 10x42 is the go-to.
Yep. And that's the one thing I always tell people is like, I need one binocular. Get a 10x42.
Yeah.
That topic of bino harness, so I'm using the same thing as Nate. It's the Pro Pack from Vortex. And my configuration is a little bit different because instead of the hand muff, I have the pistol holster. And let me tell you, this is my favorite pistol holster.
It's incredible.
It's my favorite pistol holster because how you adjust to get your handgun to fit in snugly, it's so much easier than the Velcro one where you kind of have to guess and check by randomly placing the strap inside the Velcro and whatnot. This is my favorite handgun holster for any bino harness, and I'm saying that with 100% truth and transparency. Like, this is the best holster that you can get on the market right now.
And it's also, if you do prefer, it is optics compatible for a red dot, which is pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I don't use a red dot for my handgun. And speaking of this, since we're on this topic, for protection, I use the Glock 20 10mm, and I'm shooting some of the Underwood ammo. This is like whatever Underwood sells as their grizzly bear ammo. That's what I have here. And yeah, I just have to give the flowers to the holster because I can't speak on this holster enough, how good it is. Aside from my handgun, on the side pouch right here, I just carry a spare mag loaded with the same exact ammo that I have inside my handgun at the moment. And because Nate's a lefty, I'm a righty, so my rangefinder is on the other side. And just like Nate, I use the Vortex Razor GB 4000 rangefinder. The GB stands for geoballistics, so if you wanted to pair the rangefinder to your phone, there's an app. Basically, once you have it set up, you can range an animal, let's say, and it says like 400 yards. That rangefinder will Bluetooth that data to your phone or your app, and it'll tell you like what you need to dial your scope for to take that shot. So it's a little bit of a process, but if you get it dialed or you get it figured out, it can be a little bit easier than having to constantly guess, oh, what do I need to dial my scope up to and whatnot. So that's what I have. We're pretty similar on that. The only difference between us, for the most part, is our binos. This is the Razor UHD 10x50 instead of the 10x42 like Nate's. I opt for a 10x50 just because I like the slightly larger objective for better optical lighting, especially during the early hours of the day or like the last few minutes of the daylight. So it's not that much of a difference in terms of how much light you get from the 42 to the 50. But I think there's one prime example of that, and that was just Colin being the absolute eagle eyes during our Oregon blacktail hunt. It's literally last light. Like, I'm looking through the binos, and I'm like, there's no way we're spotting stuff. Yeah. And Colin spotted a nice blacktail buck, like 600 yards off in the brush, and he doesn't even spot the deer. He spots the head of the deer. Yeah. Like just poking out of the brush. I do like the fact that the 10x50s have a slightly better or a slightly larger objective just for those rare occurrences where it really matters at last light or first light. And then obviously on the other side over here, just like Nate, I have Vortex's side pouch. It's just a zipper pouch, and then in here you can put whatever you want in there. I put usually my batteries for my cameras, elk calls, things like that, fire starters, lighters, any of that sort. And I will say this is probably my second favorite accessory for the entire Pro Pack harness system, because inside the pouch, it's not only fleece lined, but there's actual usable pockets. You can organize the little accessories in here. So if I have GoPro batteries, I'll put them in one sleeve. I can put my fire starters in another, a lighter in the other one, and so on. And I think that's one of my favorite things about it. And on top of that, in the front over here, it's also got a little opening pouch. So if you want something quick, easy access, you can put it in there as well. The one thing I do wish is I kind of just wish it closed a little bit better. So it takes a little bit more conscious effort to like make sure that lid's fully enclosed. Granted, you can also, there's these elastics on the side where you can really cinch it to make sure that cover, when you put it over, it really sits tight. It does require a little bit more maintenance, but I think that's also a given fact with any binaural harness that does not use magnets. Magnets, it's really easy because it's when you open it and close, it's like the magnets just connect. But whenever you're dealing with non-magnetic binaural harnesses, that's a problem I feel like you're just going to deal with. With that said, we're going to touch on some optics accessories that I think are worth you checking out. So Nate's already got his binocular on one of the accessories right now.
Yeah, so this is Kestrel Glassing Systems tripod adapter. It also works, this system also works with their monopod. And this is there's all sorts of different systems out there now. It seems like a new one comes out every year. This is the one that we use. It works really well for us. And it's just a quick detach system. So on your binos, you have this stud, which is part of the glassing system. I have a stud here. Samong has his stud there. And then all you have to do is slide that stud right into the adapter. And it's just really quick detach. It's light. It's easy to take off. For me, I change out a ton between optics and camera equipment, as does Samong. And having this so small and easy to swap on and off is a great advantage.
Yeah, so that Kestrel tripod adapter, it comes ready for Arca Swiss. So if your tripod has an Arca Swiss head, it just goes on there. But if you have a tripod that's not Arca Swiss, you can obviously put the right plate and screw the plate onto the bottom of that tripod adapter. Now, to add on that, this is the Kestrel Glassing Systems monopod. So in the event that you don't want to use a tripod, taking the same exact stud that Nate has on his binos in the tripod adapter, this is the monopod, and there's a slot right here where you simply insert that stud. My binos are now loaded into the system here, and the difference between a tripod adapter and this monopod is this monopod, it's a lot easier to use. So with the tripod, because it's 3 legs, if Nate's glassing that way, and let's say Nate wants to glass this way, he would have to bring the whole tripod, readjust all 3 legs, and then fine tune his eye level. Whereas with the monopod, if I want to glass over here, because this thing slides up and down, I can glass over here, and if I want to swap over here, I simply bring the monopod over, and I'll glass over here. So it's a lot quicker in terms of acquiring the binoculars to the proper eye level. Now, the biggest difference would be stability. So even though this monopod does a great job at reducing a lot of handheld stability or shakiness, the tripod, obviously, as you can see sitting there, it's essentially no movement, right? So there's not really one perfect system, right? It's just that they both help you whichever route you want to go in terms of glassing more effective and utilizing accessories for your benefit.
The monopod's a really unique product in the glassing market. There's, like I said earlier, there's quite a few different tripod binocular optics adapters out there. The one thing that is not out there is this monopod.
Yes.
It's extremely light. It's extremely user-friendly for quick glassing, especially the style that we hunt, where we may have a final destination in mind that's, half a dozen miles in, but we're going to stop 25 times on the way and glass for a few minutes as we move in. And you don't always want to take your tripod out and set it up. And so you're either out of breath and trying to do like a sitting down stabilization, holding the brim of your hat, or you pull this thing out and it's a couple ounces, 4, 5, 6 ounces.
Yeah,
I'm not
it's
quite
light.
sure on the exact weight.
And not only that, so I have the 4-piece in hand right now, but there's also a 2-piece, but this thing folds up to like
and
less than a foot.
you can legitimately put it in the side of your bino harness if you want. And
if you wanted to.
We've picked out animals because of that.
Yes, and one thing I will also touch on too is this monopod is really good for horseback riders, because I know a lot of guides who will they'll be riding their horse and you can't really put a tripod on a horse. So a lot of people will actually just put this on the saddle and then it'll help yield that way as well. So again, different methods of glassing for whatever needs you want. I think in today's market, the amount of options we have to help yield in glassing, it's awesome. But I think this monopod right here is something that's worth looking at, especially if you don't want to carry like a 2-3 pound tripod with you. You can shave like literally 30 ounces just by pounds just by going from a tripod to a glassing monopod. And again, like all Kestrel glassing systems products, there's a discount code in my description, SY10, and you can use that code to save on any products at kestrelglassingsystem.com. John Lucas is one of the nicest dudes you will meet, and I just want to help him out because I think he's got some really solid products.
Yeah, it's a great small production. It's built by someone for a purpose. He saw a hole and designed a product, which is just, it's such a cool thing when that happens.
Yep. So again, Kestrel Glassing Systems monopod. It comes in 2 options, the 4-piece here and the 2-piece. You can grab whatever one fits you best. With that said, we're gonna jump into our spotting scope setup because this is one of my favorites. I love this. So in 2024, the one I use the least is the big guy. This is the Vortex Razor 27 to 60 by 85 millimeter spotting scope. And so in case you're new, the first 2 numbers, 27-60, that's your zoom range. So 27 is the minimum zoom range, and then 60 is the maximum power that you can zoom to. The last number, the third number after the X, stands for the size of the objective lens. So 27 by 60, that's your zoom range. By 85, that stands for how big this objective is. So it's an 85 millimeter diameter objective here. And this spotting scope, it's heavy because it's the biggest one. And it's awesome if you're really trying to pick out critters in the distance, or if you're trying to identify if that deer has a 3rd point, because obviously here in Washington we have a 3-point minimum rule for mule deer. It's a great optic, but the reason why I started to use this less and less is because the other options that we have here, it can do for the most part what this big one does without the weight penalty.
Yeah.
So
this one is invaluable for my use in usually the September, October high country mule deer. If you're bear hunting, if you're just trying to identify animals, there's lots of options. Like he said, high country mule deer, if you're trying to find a 3rd point, you're glassing 12, 16, 1800 yards, a couple miles, and you're trying to still get definition on an animal, on a buck. This thing is unbeatable.
yeah, so just touching on that, where would I actually use the 85? And like Nate said, the one hunt that I will always opt for the big one is a high country mule deer hunt. So Washington obviously has a high country mule deer hunt, and I will always opt for the biggest, baddest spotting scope I can do on that hunt, because the both of us, we're not super experienced with it. We've only done it for like 3 years, but in the 3 short years that we've done it, we have never once regretted bringing the 85 millimeter spotting scope.
Never.
And so that's to me, the big spotting scope is really niche in that aspect. And obviously, if you're just glassing from the truck, this is where I would use it because you're not penalized by the weight. It doesn't matter at that point.
Yeah.
But in terms of a more practical standpoint and something that lines up more with how Nate and I hunt, we often tend to resort to the smaller spotting scopes. So this one right here is the smaller brother to the 85. This is the 16 to 48 by 65 spotting scope. So this is like the middle in terms of spotting scope. So it's like a mid-sized spotting scope. You got large, you got small, and then you have the middle one.
It's kind of like the middle child.
Yeah, and so this one actually has a lot of uses because it's not as heavy as the 85. It doesn't have the same zoom range, but it still has a pretty decent zoom range. I mean, you can still get up to 48x, which is more than these two little guys. And so it's kind of a good do-it-all spotting scope. It's not too heavy. You still get enough zoom on it. And, like, the truth is, I would not hesitate taking this 65 on pretty much all of my hunts. Yeah. Because it'll cover it all. It's just an all-purpose spotting scope.
I would kind of equate this to the 10 by 42 binoculars of the spotting scopes.
If there's one combination.
This is your 18 power binoculars. This is your 10 by 42s. Yes. And these are the mighty mini.
Yeah. And so one thing we'll touch on is Nate and I, we both use the all-in digiscoping adapter. So many people ask me, how do you guys film through your spotting scope? There's a lot of options, especially in the past like 2 years. The digiscoping market has blown up. Like there's so many options, and there's still more options being introduced right now as we speak. But the one that I have found that I have liked the most is the all-in adapter system. And essentially what it is it's a two-piece system. So you have this piece right here, and you attach it to the eyepiece of your spotting scope. And then on your phone case has a case that is designed specifically for this adapter piece. So you can essentially just magnet your phone right onto this eyepiece, and it's already designed where your phone is gonna have the optimal view through your spotting scope, so you don't have these random black blobs off in the corner of your spotting scope. Because another one we've used in the past is the mag view, and that one, it's not as fast because
it works well once you get it set, but unless you're using it a ton and are very comfortable with it, this locks your viewfinder into place with your camera, whereas the mag view is kind of you can adjust it.
Yeah, it's more adjustable, but to me, it's like I just want to get the best view right off the bat. So anytime I take my phone and I snap it onto this adapter, I already know it's recording the best view.
A common gripe with phone adapter spotting scope systems out there is that people don't want the phone case with the big adapter portion, which given all-in does have a slightly offset magnetic portion off their phone case. But one thing people don't talk about much is this is the inner case of the all-in, and the magnetic portion, the hard case, you can snap right off. I don't interchange my phone case throughout the year. This is the all-in case. I keep this on when hunting season comes or when I'm gonna go glass. I just snap on the magnetic portion, stick it in my pocket. It works great.
Yeah, so again, there's a lot of options out there. We're not affiliated with any digiscoping company. This is just what we have found that works for us. And the beautiful thing about using one system is if Nate's bringing the spotting scope and I want to film through it, I could just use my phone and film it, and I'll have the footage for myself. Versus like in 2022 when we first tested, like he was using MagView, I was using all-in, and he had a better spotting, or he had a stronger spotting scope. Mine wasn't as strong, but I couldn't film because it was not compatible in that aspect. So again, 65 millimeter, it's a great spotting scope, but 2024, I think the two of us,
the year of the mini spotters.
We really come to love these little beasts. Yeah. So what I have in my hands is the Vortex Razor HD 13 to 39 by 56 spotting scope, and Nate has
This is the Viper HD 11 to 33 by 50.
So they're both considered mini spotting scopes because they are tiny and they are like light.
Like fit in the pocket almost.
Yes. And the reason why the two of us have opted for these little guys is because they're extremely lightweight, they're compact, but at the same time, they still yield enough magnification that we can still see out to a very long distance. I mean, this spotting scope can zoom 33x, this one can zoom 39x, the 65 goes up to 48. So you're talking about 9 extra times zoom, 9 times zoom, which it can make a difference, but from my personal in the field experience, 48 to 39, if there's an animal standing there, what you see in the 48, you can still also see with the 39.
Yeah, I'm a sucker for the Viper. So that's the Razor. This is the Viper, which is technically a little bit lower
It's
on
one
the
step
Vortex
below the Razor glass.
tier quality. So the quality of the glass isn't quite there as the Razor. However, this little guy here is fantastic. And what this is a coarse focus adjustment followed by a fine focus adjustment. And this, I think, Vortex really just finally really dialed in usability.
The
with
ergonomics
focus.
of the Viper spotting scope are
They're
as
unmatched.
perfect as possible.
Yeah.
The Razor HD does not have the fine adjustment. So it's just got one big coarse adjustment. And not only that, but it's kind of, there's a lot of friction to it. And so because there's a lot of friction to it, sometimes when I'm like, I just need to focus it because it's so coarse. In terms of
a good
gritty.
example is I can, with this, without this being on a tripod, I can set this on the table and adjust focus all day without moving.
With me, I would have to hold it still and then adjust it because it takes so much. It's so grippy.
Yeah.
The one thing I have come to appreciate with this thing, and I hope a lot of optics companies start going that way in the future. The zoom ring here, the focus stuff, does not need to be stiff.
No.
if anything,
On any optics.
make it like just so smooth where like even don't make it so touchy where like any little movement will move it. But like if I'm deliberately trying to move it, it shouldn't require me to like
Stabilize the tripod.
like
lose
hold
your
it
target.
with two hands, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the thing I love about this spotting scope because like here, like the zoom right here, it's way smoother than this one because this one's more grippy. But the fine tune and can't say enough things about the Viper, the Mini Viper. If I were you, I would lean towards the Viper HD because we've put these two spotting scopes side by side. We've looked through them.
You have to, I mean,
you
you have
can't
to
tell the
glass
difference.
a lot. If you just maybe compare glass to glass, there's a slight advantage, but once you add in the ergonomics and the usability of the Viper, for me, it outweighs the Razor because I'm able to use this better. I'm able to, especially over here where we have a lot of timber, fine adjustment, you can focus through timber, you can focus through clear cuts. I mean, it's just really a fantastic piece of glass.
With that said, both of these spotting scopes were in our packs more than the two big brothers here, and it's for a good reason because they had all the zoom we need, and at the same time we weren't dealt with this huge weight penalty that a lot of people will deal with. And so you can look at it here just like how compact those two are compared to like the 65 or even the 85 here. So really, again, there's a purpose for every single one of them. We just kind of wanted to touch on why we would use certain specific model of a spotting scope in certain applications and whatnot. Obviously, we got the Vortex Summit carbon tripod over there as well. And so really, we're just trying to show you all the options that we usually brainstorm through whenever we're trying to plan a hunt or any of that sort. Like, okay, what spotting scope do we want to take? What binocular do we want to take? What type of accessories do we want? And so for the most part, that's the optics that we used in 2024. And honestly, continuing into 2025, I don't really see a major change into any of our optic system here. So that's our optic system. Hopefully it helps. Next up, we're going to talk about our sleep system. All we have on the table right now is our shelters. We will get to the sleeping bags momentarily afterwards because the sleeping bags take up too much room. So this year, full transparency, Brad Brooks, the owner of our Golly, reached out and he said, hey, I want to put some gear in your guys' hands so that you guys can test them out and give us your honest feedback because Brad, he just really wants his gear to be pushed to the limits so that he can make the best product possible, given the feedback from people who spend time outside like us and other various hunters out there. So full disclosure, our Golly hooked us up with everything you see on the table here. Okay, we did not buy any of this with our money. With that said, we're still going to be honest about it because that's what Brad wants. He wants honesty and transparency so that he can fix the flaws if there's flaws on his products. So,
which are very few.
What we have here is we have the one-person tent, the two-person tent, the four-person tent I have at home, forgot to bring it, and then we also have the six-person tent. We'll start with the one-person tent because It's the smallest one, and it's the easiest one to talk about. So the one-person tent or shelter from Argali is called a Waihi. When it comes to these types of shelters, there's two pieces. You have the shelter itself, where it protects you from outer elements like rain. And then you have the inner piece, which it's a choice. You don't need to use the inner piece, but you can if you want to. The point of the inner piece is because it's mesh and it's zippered, you're in an enclosed environment. So if you're in an environment where there's a lot of mosquitoes, a lot of bugs, a lot of ticks, you can use the insert so that you can sleep at peace and not do what Nate and I did in 2022 and get eaten alive by mosquitoes at night. Essentially, with every single one of the Argali shelters, that's the way it goes. You have the shelter, and then you have the inner mesh netting. The one person, as the name implies, it's designed to fit one person and his gear. The one thing I can vouch for with Argali, and I wish more companies would do this, is when Argali says it's a one-person tent, it actually fits a person in his gear. When Argali says it's a two-person tent, it actually fits two people and their gear. A lot of companies in this market, when they say two-person, it means one person with gear or two people and no gear. Mm-hmm. So the thing about the Argali is, I want that to be clarified, is when you buy a shelter, whether it's a two-person or six-person, know that it's gonna fit that many people. Because it gets so annoying when I buy a two-person tent off of Amazon and it shows up and it's like, this is like a kid tent. It fits a kid. So that's the one thing I wanna clarify, and I just can't appreciate Argali enough for that. So when it comes to the Waihi one-person tent, I've only used it a handful of times because, in my honest opinion, I think the two-person tent is about the smallest I would go, because even though it's a two-person tent, when I do a solo hunt, the amount of extra room where I can splay out my gear in the two-person tent, it outweighs the little weight that you're saving by going from a two-person to a one-person. Not to take anything away from the Waihi, it's a great tent, and if you're that really ultralight, you're trying to shave as many ounces as you can, I don't have anything to complain about.
I have used it, and I will continue especially to use it during scouting season.
Yes.
Summer scouting trips where you're maybe covering a lot of miles, you are going for more of the ultralight, not setting up as much of a camp. The one-person shelter is fantastic for that.
Yeah, and the beautiful thing about the one-person shelter is you can actually set it up with a trekking pole. As you will see momentarily, a lot of the other shelters, you can't set it up with a trekking pole. You need the actual standing pole that comes with the shelter. So again, that's one voucher for the Waihi one-person tent, is you can save weight by just sparing a trekking pole to pitch out your shelter rather than having to carry an entire stand-up or center pole. So that's the one-person tent. Just really quick about that. The next up is the Argali Rincon two-person tent, and this is probably my most commonly used shelter out of the entire Argali setup, because oftentimes when I'm backcountry hunting, it's usually just me and Nate, or me and a person. Like, there's usually hardly more than two people. Granted, this year when Nate and I did it, we also had our buddy Tanner show up, so there was three of us, so the two-person wasn't gonna cut it. But if you're looking at this and you're saying, hey, I wanna look for a shelter for the backcountry, and it's usually just me running solo, or maybe I'll have a buddy, I think the Rincon two-person tent is the best option for weight savings, the amount of space that you will still have. The thing about all these Argali shelters that we have here is they all use the same polyester fabric, and it's called a no-sag fabric. So when it rains and it gets damp, the fabric doesn't cave in on you. Whereas there's a lot of shelters out there, when it gets wet, your normal shelter space is like this, but because it's getting wet and it's getting heavy, it'll actually sag in on you, and it will eliminate the volume that you have inside of the shelter. That's the biggest thing that I can vouch for when it comes to all of these Argali shelters, is the no-sag polyester fabric that they use. It actually works.
Absolutely.
So again, same deal with the Waihi one-person. You have the shelter itself, the tarp, if you will, and then it also comes with a full insert or a half insert if you prefer to do a half insert. We have the full insert here because I don't want to sleep inside the insert and then have him stuck outside with the bugs and mosquitoes.
Kick me out, classic.
So again, same deal with Argali and that stuff, but can't speak on it enough. It's just a shelter that works.
It's a shelter that works.
That's all I can
works
say
well
about
for hunters. The 4-person isn't here. We'll overlay some footage, some photos. The 4-person is where their stove jacks start getting used. So their 4, 6, and 8-person tents all have stove jacks. I haven't personally used their stove or a stove in the 4-person, just the 6-person. I'll reiterate what Samong said, is that when Argali says 4-person, you can legitimately sleep 4 people. It is not uncomfortable. You're not on top of each other. It is just a comfortable 4-person tent. Back in 2021, if you look back at our 2021 High Country Mule Deer video in Washington, Steve and Samong and I were sleeping in an alleged 8-person tent, and you can go back and see this. And this 8-person tent barely fit the 3 of us. What they say their gear will do, it does, and it does it well. So I've really appreciated that.
Yeah.
4-person tent's great. I've used it in spring with 2 people as well, because in spring when you have a ton of rain, like spring turkey, or if we're not hiking quite as far, you can afford a little bit more weight for 2 people.
Yep.
That's a great option. Another thing you can do if you don't want to carry the center pole for either the 4, 6, 8-person, or for the 4-person and 6-person, excuse me, is you can get on the Argali trekkers, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes, but you can get an adapter. You can pop the top cap off of each trekker. They sell an adapter. You can screw the 2 trekking poles together, and that can be your center pole. Or you can always find a stick or a, kind of a branch. We've done it with the center poles. They're light. They work great. It's a non-issue. The highlight for me this year, and for Samong, I would also say, was the new Selway 6-person. So this tent is fantastic. Don't let the size fool you. Another great thing that Argali does is they give you extra room in your tent. So when you're packing up at the end of the trip, or when you're packing up your soaked tent, your snowy tent, your muddy tent, this thing can compress way down, and they give you extra room in your tent bag, which I love. I love that in sleeping bags. I love that in sleeping pads. I love that in tents. The 6-person fits 6 people. Surprise, surprise.
5 people.
5 people, stove, and gear.
With the stove.
Yeah, which is incredible.
And gear.
Yeah.
And
wood.
We would have still been able to fit a 6-person.
Yeah. So the 6-person, this is the 6-person tent here. This is the half insert, and this is the half floor. We didn't actually use the half insert in the field this year. This would realistically fit 3 people, and then you could fit the gear and the stove on the outside of the half insert. We were hunting in the late fall, early winter time when bugs really weren't an issue. We were fine with a floorless shelter. However, we did take the half floor, which this thing was fantastic. We were able to just lay our sleeping pads right on this. We're kind of able to have a clean area. I always appreciate on long backcountry hunts if you can have a little bit of a cleaner area in your floorless shelter, everything doesn't get caked in dirt. Yeah. And then the 6-person tent, we went through some wet conditions with it. It did not sag.
We also went through some really windy conditions with this thing, and it did not topple over.
Yeah, so there's plenty of guy out points on all of these, actually. We used the bottom row of guy out points on this. The other thing that's really nice about the 6-person and the 4-person, and I don't know about the 2-person, but there's doors on each side of the tent. Mm-hmm. So if you have 2 people or 4 people, you don't have everybody climbing over each other in the middle of the night or in the mornings if people are getting out at different times. You can open 2 doors. Another thing is, in the mornings when there's condensation in the tent, you can open up both sides of the tent, and your tent dries quick. Yep. This is the Argali Skyline Titanium Stove, the Skyline TI. You can either get it with stovepipe for the 6-person, or also the stovepipe for the 4-person. This is a 6-person stovepipe. We've used a couple stoves out there. As far as assembly goes, it's kind of in the middle of the pack. It's pretty easy to assemble. It's pretty simple. You don't feel like you need an instruction manual out there. Yep. One thing I really like is it's 15 inches deep. Yes. Which a lot of stoves, backcountry stoves, are light, and they work well, and they get hot, but they're really shallow, and so you can't fit very big pieces of wood. Your stove goes out quick. Yep. This thing you can fit 15-inch pieces of wood in. You can really decrease the frequency that you're stoking it throughout the night. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and so it seems like we've been just glazing Argali, because the truth is, like, they're great shelters. I don't have a bone to pick with any of them. The only thing that I would tell Brad is to fix the door on the stove. Because with the stove, the door where you put the wood in, it's a sliding door, and not only is it a sliding door, there's no end to it, so you can essentially just completely remove the door. The problem with that is it falls off when I'm trying not to remove the door.
Yeah.
Like it just would naturally keep, if you go too far, the door will just pop off, and it's kind of a pain to put the thing back on, especially when the stove is piping hot, because the door gets hot, and now you're trying to like not get burned at the same time trying to put the door back on.
Yeah.
So the only thing I would really have to complain about is I would either make that sliding door have a catch where it can't go past a certain point where the door cannot fall off, or make it a swivel.
Yeah,
like
an
an actual door.
A hinge door, yeah.
That's my only complaint about any of the Argali stuff when it comes to the shelters, is just fix the door on the stove. If he does that, this setup here,
there's nothing to complain about.
It's flawless.
Yeah.
Like it's literally flawless.
Yeah.
So I can't say enough good things about it, but again, that's just my one gripe about the Argali stuff. Is
another thing that's great about Argali is if you get any of their products, they have a fantastic line on YouTube of tutorials on how to set up and use all their products. For instance, I thought I could just go out and set up a 6-person massive tent with no issue my first time, and little did I know that it takes actually a little bit of skill. And they have a great line of tutorial videos on YouTube that are simple, quick. You can pull them up if you have service even when you're on the hunt and see, oh, this is the right way to do it. And not that they're convoluted to set up, but to set up a shelter, a floorless shelter with a center pole properly, can take a little practice and skill, and they're great at educating about that.
Yep. So those are the shelters that we ran for 2024, and for the foreseeable future, it's not going to change.
No.
We are now talking about sleeping bags, and for this past season, I've used 2 sleeping bags. How many did you use?
I've only used one.
Just one. So we're going to talk about these 2 because, in my honest opinion, I think these are the 2 sleeping bags that you should take a look at if you're looking for a backcountry sleeping bag. I think these are the 2 best of the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we have in front of us is the Argali Alpine sleeping bags, and also the renowned Stone Glacier Chilkoot sleeping bags. So both Nate and I have our own Stone Glacier sleeping bags, and both of us also have our own Argali Alpine sleeping bags. Now, just some background on sleeping bags in general. A lot of times when you're looking for sleeping bags in the market, when they say a sleeping bag is like rated for 15 degrees or 30 degrees, they are saying that you will survive at 30 degrees or 15 degrees. That does not mean comfort.
Correct.
And that is the biggest misconception that a lot of people get. Don't just think that, if you go to the store and you buy like $150 15 degree sleeping bag, that you're going to be comfortable to 15 degrees. No, a lot of times those cheaper sleeping bags just simply tell you the absolute lowest extreme temperatures that you will not die in. That is not the case with these higher end sleeping bags, especially with the Alpine sleeping bag from Argali and the Stone Glacier Chilkoot. With Stone Glacier and Argali, when they say 15 degrees, that means that you will be comfortable down to 15 degrees. If they say 0 degrees, you will be comfortable to 0 degrees.
Yeah.
And as the both of us have personally experienced, that rings true with the both of these. And that's why I can say that.
Absolutely.
So, again, to continue with Argali, Brad, again, he sent us 2 of his Alpine sleeping bags during the prototype testing stages. So they just released last month in January, but we were given these in the summer of 24. So we used the prototype versions from August, and I used them all the way through December. Throughout some of that, I would swap it out for the Stone Glacier just to kind of get a more fair comparison between the 2. Nate, you have the 20 degree Alpine.
Yep. Now this is the 4th sleeping bag I've had. I've had a Feathered Friends. I've used a Western Mountaineering. Both of those are more in the hiking, alpining industry. Fantastic sleeping bags. I do also gravitate more towards the Stone Glaciers and the Argalis, the ones that support our industry, hunters, fellow hunters. They're designed for hunting, and I really like that. That being said, this is the first season that I've spent from early season all the way till the end of late season in a 20 degree bag. I have always had a 0 degree bag, and in many cases been chilly, and I have been warm throughout every single night in this 20 degree bag, which I was not expecting. Brad told us, hey, we're going for true to degree rating here, comfort rating, not survival rating, and I was skeptical. I think Samong was probably skeptical.
I think Brad is calling this the honest temperature rating.
The honest temperature rating, yeah. Whatever it's called, I was skeptical. And I have no more skepticism. It really was comfortable in some really, not only cold nights, but pretty damp nights as well. So I'll give you just an overview of this bag. It's a sleeping bag like any other sleeping bag. You can only get so fancy with it. It is a mummy style. A couple things that are unique about it that I appreciate is a little bit wider foot box. So for myself, I either like to sleep in my damp clothes on wet days or take those damp clothes and sleep in the bag with them. This bag, like the Stone Glacier bag, allows for that pretty handily, whereas a lot of other tight mummy bags, you're pushing it with just what you're wearing. As you move up the bag, one thing all bags should have, this bag does not, and I don't know why any bag would not have it, is a snag-free zipper. It is a simple thing, but it is a completely experience-changing. When you can get in the bag at the end of the night, or you're getting out to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, or whatever, and you can zip and unzip your bag without any issue. As you move up the bag, oh, that's on the 0 degree that there's an internal baffle. But one thing I appreciate is this bag is there's not magnets, it's not Velcro. Things that come undone really easily. This has just really easy plastic snaps, which hold really tight throughout the night. I kind of rotisserie chicken throughout the night and turn, and it never comes unsnapped. Around here, the neck baffle and up around the head is all controlled by one pull, one drawstring. So the bottom portion controls the neck, the upper portion controls the head. It was really good at moisture management for me. I stayed dry on some pretty wet nights, especially when you're sleeping in floorless shelters. There's a lot of condensation. The bags dried out quick during the daytime. They're extremely light. They're extremely compressible. It comes in at 1 pound, 14 ounces. Which
sub 2 pounds.
Sub 2 pounds for a sleeping bag is, I mean, that's quilt weight.
A full size
to comfort, yeah.
And the one thing I do want to mention on Argali is Argali sleeping bags come in different sizes. So there's like long and short. So the weight is going to be relative speaking here.
Yeah, there was like a 2 ounce difference.
Yeah.
But
it's very marginal.
For the 20 degree, it has 20 ounces of 850 fill in it. Yeah. 850 plus downfill.
Yep. And so, as Nate said, the 20 degree is essentially identical with the 0 degree. Obviously, the 0 degree just has more downfill to make it a 0 degree temperature rating sleeping bag. And then, as Nate briefly mentioned, with the 0 degree, it does have a neck baffle that goes around your neck so that you can really insulate the heat from your neck downward. And then, obviously, like the 20 degree, you can cinch the hood of the sleeping bag and cover your face as well. This is Nate's bread and butter.
So this right here is the Elite Dream Pillow. This is a pillow that Argali came out with for backpacking when they came out with these. Now, to be completely honest, out of our ignorance throughout the whole season, we got this pillow, we opened it up, and we looked at it, and I was like,
we were like, this is so pointless.
This is a pointless pillow. It is flat.
Sleeping bag? That is so pointless.
This is not that great until Brad so kindly redirected us that in fact the zipper opens up and you can put your Puffy into it.
You can put a jack in it. Yeah. So like we went through essentially the whole season.
Yeah.
Just thinking that this down pillow was the most useless thing ever because like down compresses, so it's not going to do anything. And so Kevin reached out. Kevin Harlander, who was working for Argali back in 24, he's now moved on to a different company. He checked in on us. He's like, hey, man, what do you think of the pillow? I'm like, dude, truthfully, like, I don't know what the purpose of that pillow is. And Kevin's like, let me tell you what it's for. You're supposed to put a jacket in it. And that's when the light bulb went off.
Very, very kindly called us morons, which we needed. All to say, in the past, I've tried a lot of different backpacking pillows, and they all revolve around some sort of air bladder, which I really don't like. I feel like I'm just sleeping on a grocery bag, even if it has a little bit of down.
Even though when there's insulation, it's not warm.
No, it's not warm. This is totally different. You've got it with your bag that you don't need to sleep in your down jacket because it's true to rating. And it's kind of got a micro fleece top. Obviously, you have like the actual beef of a pillow like you'd have at home because it's filled with material. And you still have a little bit of that down top that kind of gives that soft and fluffiness if you're still filling it with maybe not a down jacket, but something that's a little bit harder. So pillow's great. Side note, it has a couple little buttons that pop out on the back of each side, and there are corresponding button holes inside each hood, so that you can, if you want to, button your pillow right into the hood and it's not going to go anywhere, which is a pretty sweet little addition.
This is, as far as my knowledge go, this is the first of its kind.
Yeah.
And a pillow that's actually designed for the sleeping bag, that is comfortable, that is warm, and won't shift around when you're moving at night because it's actually attached to the sleeping bag. So again, this pillow works for all the Argali sleeping bags. It's going to work for the 20, it's going to work for the 0 as I have here. And man, I can't say enough good things about the Argali sleeping bag.
Yeah, and without the jacket, the pillow is only 3 ounces. So I mean, you're talking like a mouthful of water from a water bottle for a pretty large step up in comfort in the backcountry.
Yeah, and so obviously Nate used his sleeping bag. I used my sleeping bag. I believe the coldest night was 6 degrees. So it didn't get quite to 0 degrees, but 6 degrees is close enough that you probably wouldn't know the difference. And I slept in the sleeping bag. That was actually on a late season hunt in Montana that I did. I was sleeping in my Kodiak canvas. It's a wall tent, not insulated. And this sleeping bag, the one thing I did get cold, and I think this is just true because of the nature of down, is like when you compress down, it doesn't loft up so it's not warm. The only time I got cold was when in the middle of the night, I would wake up and my knees like poking out on the side and it's compressing all that down. That's when I got cold. But as soon as I put my leg back and I allowed the down to re-loft, I was actually just comfortable. So it's obviously, this is an invincible sleeping bag where you're always going to be warm. You still have to utilize the down how it's designed to, where it needs the loft to give you the proper heat retention. And that, again, that's the same thing for the Stone Glacier. So both of my Argali and the Stone Glacier Chilkoot are 0 degrees. And I've used them both in the Montana hunt. And when it comes to the warmth, there was no difference. I was completely warm in both the Stone Glacier and the Argali sleeping bag. Again, the biggest thing about the Argali is it's light, very lightweight. And on top of that, there's some features where the Stone Glacier lacks. Mm-hmm. For example, the pillow, the ability to put an actual built-in pillow to the hood, the button instead of a magnet that the Stone Glacier uses. So Stone Glacier, I don't know why, but they use a magnet to put your neck baffle together.
And it doesn't stay.
That magnet is pointless because when you toss and turn, that magnet just comes undone. Mm-hmm. So it's literally pointless. Whereas with the Argali, because it's a button, it has a much more secured placement on that. So even when you're tossing and turning with the Argali, it's not gonna break off unless obviously you're really moving it. With that said, the other thing that I also like with Argali is the fact that they give you sizes. Stone Glacier is a one size fits all. This sleeping bag can fit up to a person that's 6'5".
Yeah, and again, it's really individual preference.
Yep.
Samong and I, I'm 6 foot. Samong's just under.
Yep.
We're fairly kind of skinny, bony guys, and so I appreciate that with the Argali bags. They're a little bit tighter in than the Stone Glacier. It's less area for you to warm with your body heat during night. Our buddy Steve, he's a big dude. He's 6'2", 6'3", 240 pounds. And
this fits him perfect.
He loves the Chilkoot 0 degree because he's a bigger dude. He fills it up a lot nicer. He doesn't have as much, dead space that he has to fill with his body heat, and he can still have plenty of room. And he's, never really found a sleeping bag prior to the Chilkoot that he enjoyed sleeping in through the night.
Yeah, and speaking on Steve, I actually pointed him to the Stone Glacier because he's like, dude, all the sleeping bags I used, I just feel like I'm stuck.
Yeah.
Because he can't move because they're so tight. And so I pointed him to Stone Glacier, and he loves the Stone Glacier. Again, his biggest gripe on the Stone Glacier is the magnet.
Yeah.
I think anybody that's used
and the snaggy zipper.
Yes, that is the big difference. So the Stone Glacier, it's not a bad zipper. Like, it's a fairly good zipper, but it's not as snag-proof as the Argali as we have used. And so with that said, like, both of these sleeping bags are fantastic. I think they're top of the top. And if you went with either one, I don't think you would be disappointed in either one of them. I just think that with what the Argali offers and all the compatibility with the accessories, it's hard to It's hard.
It's a flip a coin, and we're talking about debating in the top 1% of sleeping bags.
If you blindfolded me and you put these 2 sleeping bags in one of those totes and said, "Hey, I'm going to blindfold you, go grab one," I would happily go grab one and I would just go hunting. It's not going to make or break my hunt. It'll make my hunt, but neither of them will break my hunt. So there's a reason why we're showcasing both the Stone Glacier and the Argali. It's because we think, with personal use and experience with both of them, we think that they are the best sleeping bags for the hunting market today. Obviously, as Nate mentioned, there's the Western mountaineering stuff, but these are actually hunting industry sleeping bags. So that's why we tend to lean that way a little bit more. Last but not least, for our sleep system, sleeping pads, Nate and I essentially use the same one. This is the Thermarest Neo Air X-Therm sleeping pad. This is one of the warmest, if not the warmest sleeping pad on the market today. I use the Max version, which the Max version simply stands for the rectangular shape. Nate uses the more traditional mummy style type pad. So at the foot box over here, it's not as straight. It's more tapered.
It's the NXT version, which I have the long version, so it's 76 inches, which is nice because it gives a little bit more length, but it is more mummy style.
Yep. And so this one is the Max version, and this is the standard version. So they come with another version, what's called wide, which they give you like an extra 3 or 4 inches. So if you're a bigger guy, like your arms won't be falling off the side. But as Nate mentioned earlier, both of us we're pretty slim. So like the standard pad for me, I haven't had any issues with it. To speak on the warmth of this, what I mean by that is there's actually down insulation in the sleeping pad. So earlier we talked about our down sleeping bags, but the problem with down is when you're laying on your sleeping bag, you're compressing that down, which when you're compressing down, it's essentially ineffective. And so that's when the sleeping pad comes into play. And so how you measure the warmth of a sleeping pad is called the R value. The R value, the higher the R value, the warmer the sleeping pad. So I think this is like a
7.3.
7.3, which is really hot.
So there's one sleeping pad made by Nemo actually on the market that's higher R value. It's R value of 8. But a couple things about this sleeping pad that made me choose it independently of Samong actually using it. I didn't even realize that he used the same one. Is 2. One is the material that this is made out of. It's pretty quiet. So when you have this sleeping pad with a sleeping bag, a lot of times when you're moving around in the night, they can get really loud really fast. With the higher R value, it gets more like crinkly material with the reflective barriers on the inside. And if I'm hunting with a buddy or I'm hunting in closer proximity to animals, it's just nice to have a bit of a quieter pad.
Yep.
The other thing that I read pretty commonly about the Nemo pad was, though, although it was warmer, it was extremely slippery. So unless you had a sleeping bag that had some traction to it, which a lot of the lightweight backcountry bags don't have, people were doing a lot of slipping and sliding if they weren't on a perfectly level surface, which I did not have this issue with this pad at all this year.
Yeah, and most of the time we don't sleep on flat surfaces.
Most of the time we're not on flat surfaces. Yes, that was an easy decision.
We have spent more times on a pretty steep angle than on a flat surface.
Yeah.
So that's our sleeping pad. And again, I think once you get above an R value of 5, for the most part, those are considered all weather or 4-season sleeping pads. Anything less than that is usually considered 3 seasons, so like fall, spring, and summer, not winter. But again, with Nate and I, we try to streamline our gear as much as possible, so it's nice to just have one sleeping pad and just grab this one and not have to worry about being cold or grabbing the wrong one on accident. So
yeah, and I don't think for a long time I didn't really understand the significance that a good sleeping pad had. I had a good sleeping pad, Nemo pad, but it was an ultralight backcountry one. It had an R value of like 4.3, which is not low. However, I didn't think I would notice the difference as starkly as I did going from that pad to this pad. With the same bags, I was significantly more warm and comfortable through the night.
Yep, and then just one little thing that I had, but I forgot to bring it here. It's called the little flex tail pump. And so with a valve over here, instead of having to blow through it with your mouth and get lightheaded, or using the pump sack that comes with the bag, it's a little rechargeable tool where you can simply plug into the valve here. You turn it on and it sucks in air and it blows air into your sleeping pad. That's probably one of the most underrated pieces of gear that
It's a nice little
wish I would have
backcountry
here.
luxury.
Yeah, and it's rechargeable. And for the most of us, I mean, for you and I, we carry a lot of batteries for cameras. So like naturally, we have a rechargeable power bank of some kind with us. So if that thing does run out, we can just plug it into our power bank and recharge it and have it work again. So that's our sleeping pad system. It's pretty simple. Just the Neo Air X-Therm sleeping pad. Again, there's different sizes, even different models or different shapes. I used a regular standard size Max, and then he obviously uses the NXT Long.
Yep.
So that's our sleeping pad, and that wraps up our sleep system for 2024. And just like the vast majority of a gear, we don't really see that changing for 2025.
No.
Next topic, we are going to cover clothing. And this is one of my least favorite categories because with where a lot of people's heads are at, you don't need to be there, right? Obviously, Nate and I, we have some relatively expensive stuff in front of us, but guys, when it comes to clothes, like you don't need expensive stuff.
If you go back a video and look at Samong's Uncle Blong's elk,
wearing
you will
jeans.
You will notice in the video multiple times where he pans to the jeans and the red tennis shoes in a probably arguably the most rugged terrain in this state.
Yeah.
So
what we're going to talk about here is what we use for 24. And at the same time, we're also going to be very real with you guys and talk about what we use, but similar pieces that you can get away with that do not have the same price tags.
And I will say, a lot of our gear going up, I feel like we've had pretty dialed, especially myself. I don't see changing, sleep system, packs, boots really going into the future. I cannot say the same thing about clothes.
Yes.
I can see myself trying different things that I didn't like so much this year, and not necessarily more expensive or nicer things, just different.
Yeah. And so, a lot of things today, I don't want to dog on it to it because there is some technological advancements that have made big strides. But for the vast majority, if you look at the core of clothing, what does a shirt do? It keeps you kind of warm.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe wicks a little.
Wicks a little bit. What is the point of a very expensive puffy jacket and an inexpensive one? It tries to keep you warm. That's it. Take a very basic look at it. With that said, with that preface out of the way, we're going to dive into our system. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our tops. So the things we wear on our upper bodies. And Nate and I, we kind of have some overlapping pieces. So to save some time, we'll just kind of bounce on that. So Nate, what do you wear for base layer top?
So base layer top, most of my gear that I wore this year was 2.0. So this is a 220 Merino hoodie. This was pretty much on me, a little bit sweaty in August, all the way through warm in December. I found out that I really like Merino base layers. I'm not as huge a fan of the synthetic. I appreciate the moisture and the scent control that it has. And this one has a hood. I found out that I really do love to have a hood on my base layer. A lot of the times, if the weather's decent, this is really the only thing I'm wearing. If you're hiking, it's nice and breathable, it keeps you cool. And if the weather's a little bit colder, it will insulate really well. So always Merino on the base for me.
The number stands for the weight of the fabric. So I think it's like grams per meter squared or something like that. So for example, that 250 hoodie that Nate just went over, it's a 250 weight piece of garment, meaning the fabric itself is like 250 grams per meter squared.
Yeah.
So with Nate, he wears a slightly heavier base layer than I personally like. With base layers, I always go thin. It doesn't matter if I'm doing a summer hunt in August or I'm doing a November late season cold hunt. I was wearing the 2.0 Merino 150 kinetic long sleeve, but I've also been rocking the Sitka Core Lightweight Crew long sleeve. I've had this base layer for 4 or 5 years now, and this is a synthetic layer, unlike the 2.0, which is Merino. And you always hear the big debate between Merino and synthetic. Merino's, the properties is that they keep you warm when they're wet, and they're also a lot better at fighting odor. The thing about synthetic that I like is it's moisture wicking. It's better at wicking moisture and drying it out, so it dries out faster than Merino.
Quicker.
But at the same time, it also breathes better. So I'm a type of person where if I'm hiking and I get hot, all my energy just saps. For next to skin, what's on my body, on my skin, the Sitka Core Lightweight Crew has been fantastic for me. And again, just to reemphasize, you don't need to go buy a Sitka base layer. You don't need to go buy a 2.0 base layer. Anything that has similar properties. If you want to go merino, just find a merino base layer that does those properties, or find a synthetic layer that has the same properties too, without the price tag.
Right.
I'm not telling you to go buy Sitka or go buy 2.0. Just look at the properties, and if you can justify it, that's where you go. Speaking on that, so the 250 weight that Nate wears base layer, that's actually what I wear on top of this. So I consider the 250 weight my mid layer. So I'll wear this next to skin, and then I'll throw the 250 weight, which is right here, with the hood as well, over that. And this right here has been my go-to combo for the past 2.5 years, and it's been a good combo. I like the hood. The hood on the 250 weight is
fantastic.
It
keeps you really warm.
It fits perfectly. It fits me well when I'm wearing a hat, because some hoods, they're not designed for a hat. And so when you put it over your head or your hat, it's like riding up on your shoulders or your armpit. So I really like that. That will generally be all I wear, and then everything beyond this is just some type of puffy insulated jacket or piece. So what's next for you above your 250 weight?
Above me for my 250 weight is a 2.0 Puffy. You can remind me of the actual model name of this.
That's the Clement Puffy.
Clement Puffy. This is what I wore for part of the season. I was impartial to it. It's kind of a weird area where it's a puffy, but it's still not the warmest thing. What I actually ended up gravitating more towards is last year I went outside of the hunting industry and bought the RAB Neutrino Pro down jacket, which is like their warmest of warm, cold weather puffy jacket, because I don't like to be cold. And that was the jacket that I used through the most of the season, and it was absolutely killer.
It eliminated your need for a puffy.
It eliminated my need for like a mid-layer puffy. So I'll go with the 250 weight as the base layer. I might sometimes have this. I don't have the RAB with me, but that was usually my next step in the puffy before I got to like rainy weather with rain gear or anything like that.
So you go pretty streamlined on your tops, like as far as, at least compared to me.
Yeah.
So for me, I really like to micromanage my layers. Like my operating window when it comes to my personal temperature and heat, it has to be perfect at all times, or else I don't like being cold. I don't like being hot. I want to always be perfect. And so my layers I have a lot more layers than Nate. Nate kind of has less layers that kind of cover a bigger spectrum, if you will. Yeah. To me, it's like I have a very lightweight base layer. I have a slightly heavier hoodie. And then the next thing I would typically put on is this thing. This is the Sitka Kelvin active jacket, discontinued. And this has a little bit of synthetic insulation in it, but it's only a little bit. And so the purpose of this design was it keeps you warm enough, but when you're active, you're walking around, it's still breathable, so you're not building up all this sweat. And I love this jacket. I'm kind of bummed that Sitka discontinued it. I've had this jacket for about 5 years now. So one thing you will see throughout my clothing system is a lot of this stuff is expensive, but it's lasted me years, right? It's kind of like a buy one time, cry one time type of deal. So I would add this thing on top. And for the vast majority of my hunts, whenever I'm hiking, that's all I wear for my tops. The next thing that we're going to talk about is when we sit down. Nate already touched on his RAB Neutrino Pro, which is his big, down, heavy insulated jacket for glassing sessions. To me, I go to two methods. So this year, I actually just purchased this jacket I'm wearing. This is the Stone Glacier Grumman down hoodie jacket. So it's got a hood on the back. And aside with that, this is the Sitka Kelvin down Windstopper hoodie. I've had this jacket since 2020, so 5 years coming out. Again, just goes back to the point, it's expensive stuff, but treat it well, and it's expensive at first, but over the years, if it lasts you, it's worth the money. The reason why I have two different types of downs here is because this thing is way warmer than this jacket, but this jacket is way lighter than this thing. This thing weighs 2 pounds, 32 ounces. This jacket weighs about 10 ounces. So I'm shaving 1.5 pounds simply by going from this big jacket to this jacket. The difference is this jacket is, because it's so light, it's not durable. Like I kind of feel scared to bust brush with this jacket because it might just rip. Whereas this thing, it's so burly. I have leaned up against rocks. I have busted brush with it, and this thing is still completely fine because the outer layer is so robust. Yeah. So depending on what I'm doing, I will either throw on the Grumman or this thing, or like in Montana where it was so cold, I would actually wear this thing and then I would wear that thing on top. With that system, I was set.
That's right.
I can conquer pretty much any hunt that I can think of with.
And if it gets really cold in desperate times and you're sitting glassing,
start fire.
Never hurts to pull out the sleeping bag.
Yes, that's what we did.
Like when our bear hunt in August, when it was just starting to get chilly in the mountains, and we'd been in eastern Washington in 100 degrees all summer, and it was 40 degrees, and we thought we were about to die from hypothermia. You can pull out the sleeping bags.
Exactly.
It works great.
So with that said, the last piece is rain jacket. Nate and I, we used the same jacket. This is the 2.0 Gear rain jacket, and it's a good jacket. It's not the lightest, but it's also not the heaviest weight. It's kind of like a mid-weight rain jacket. It's a good jacket. To me, I just wish that they had pit zips.
Yeah.
I think that when it comes to any rain gear, especially for hunters, ventilation should always be a priority on both the jacket and the pants.
Yeah.
And I love this jacket. It fits well, but I just really wish they had a pit zip.
Yeah. I was actually really pleasantly surprised with this rain jacket. I've gone through kind of the gamut of rain gear, and for a long time I kind of lean more towards the ultralight stuff. I would find, in fact, I'd made the decision about 2023 in Montana when I took a fall kind of elk hunting, pouring rain, and I had a super lightweight rain jacket on and just completely tore out the whole side of it. Yeah. Rain jacket's no good anymore. Made my own pit zips on that one. And
non-zippered.
Non-zippered pit zips, yes. So this thing is a bit more burly. I've leaned more towards more burly. If I'm going to carry at least a rain jacket, I want it to be something, A, that's going to keep me dry, that I can bust brush in if it's wet, and B, that's a really good windbreaker, because if it's windy and you have a down jacket and then you can pair that with a good rain jacket, it's a whole nother level of warmth that you can kind of unlock without more insulation.
Yep.
Just with the rain jacket.
Exactly. So again, the fabric itself is great. The pockets, the zippers are nice. They just need to add.
The design was lacking a bit. Yeah.
Zip to allow heat to dump. That's really it. I have like 5 to 6 pieces. Nate has about 4. Like you don't need a lot of pieces as long as each piece does.
Preference.
Yeah, it's personal preference, but the point is you can fine tune your own system. And again, you don't need to go buy top of the line stuff like what we have here. There's a lot of way cheaper stuff that can resemble the same properties that we have wearing the jackets or the shirts that we have today. And a lot of times, here's the real deal. You can get a lot of this high-end stuff at really good prices if you shop right. Yeah. Wait for clearances, wait for sales, or heck, buy used. I think buying used is one of the most underrated ways of getting good gear at a pretty effective price.
100%.
A lot of my stuff is used gear.
Yeah.
But people don't know that. They just see it. They just see what I have, and then they go and research it, and they look at the MSRP price, and they're like, "Wow, that's expensive." It is. That's why I bought it used.
Yeah.
So that's our tops. Now we're gonna dive into our bottoms, and I think this is even more simple than our tops.
Yeah.
So what are you rocking for boxers? Are you rocking any type of special boxers?
Yeah, I don't know their exact name. It's Kuiu's Merino.
Okay. He's rocking Kuiu Merino. I've been rocking the Sitka Merinos for like 5 years. I bought my Sitka, all my Sitka stuff back in 2020. So everything then is I'm still using today. So it's like 5 years now.
Yeah.
Granted, this thing's kind of on its last leg, but it's done me well. I think when it comes to boxers, any type of boxers that is moisture wicking and breathable.
Well, it's funny because I also neglected the boxers for a long time because you hear endless talk about the best technology and all the clothing and the moisture wicking and stuff, and then people go out and wear cotton boxers, and you're kind of neglecting
you're just ignorant to the fact of what it can do.
Oh, absolutely. So that they work great.
Yeah, Merino, or synthetic.
There's a million different Merino or synthetic boxer brands out there.
XGO's got some solid one. I have a pair from them. You can go about any way you want. It's not just Sitka or Kuiu.
Yeah.
So that's our boxers that we're rocking. We're going to jump into kind of like our late season stuff because the only time I wear an actual base layer for my legs is when it's cold. They are the 20250 kinetic base layers. These are long johns. These are very simple. There's no zippers or anything. It's got an elastic waistband here, and they fit tight to the skin. It's honestly a very good piece. In terms of fit, comfort, feel, it's a solid piece. Granted, because this is a 250 weight, this is the same exact fabric that they use on the 250 hoodie. Same exact material, it's just that this is in a legging format, the other one's in a hoodie format. And the only time I'm rocking leggings is if I'm actively hiking when it's like sub-freezing.
Yeah.
I don't wear leggings or long johns warmer than 32 degrees.
Yeah, I don't have them here with me, but I wear the 250 weight First Light long underwear.
And those are zip off.
Those go full zip on each side, and it's really a personal preference thing. Samong doesn't like them. Yep. He has them. I love them. I would rather deal with a little bit of that discomfort from having a zipper on your waistband because I like to be warmer, so I'd rather start a hike a little bit warmer than make myself warm up. You know, it's not a barrier to stop and then take off your layer. I can just unzip them and be done with it.
I love the features of having a full zip where you don't need to take off your boots to be able to take off the long johns. I have the Kuiu ones, and my problem, to emphasize on what Nate was talking about, so at the top of the zip where it comes to right about your bone right here, your waist bone, there's a piece of Velcro as well as your zipper. And when you go to cinch your waist belt of your pack, sometimes that creates a hot spot because there's like this awkward bulge there.
Yeah.
And it's just like pinching me, which is why I don't like it. Obviously, you're okay with it. The one thing that I would advise you if you're looking in that market and you want to zip off, look at the Stone Glacier long johns, because how they have designed their zippers, it does not come up to your side. They actually go towards your front and up to your crotch area. So when you cinch your waist belt on your pack, there's nothing there. Yeah. It's just fabric.
That's a great design.
And so I've really been intrigued by Stone Glacier's long john, but the fact that I don't really use a long john, it didn't justify me spending that much money to just go buy that simply for that feature set. But if you are interested, I think Stone Glacier right now has the best zipper design for a removable long john in the market right now. Jump into our pants that we wear. I've got two pants here.
I've got one pants, but I kind of wear two. These are the 2.0. This is their non-insulated
Clime pant.
Clime pant.
This is essentially a slightly lighter weight Kuiu attack pant.
Yeah, basically. So it's a little bit warmer. It's not completely lightweight. It's kind of got that stretch, that omnidirectional stretch fabric. These are what I wore this year. I kind of wanted to commit this year to just really wearing one piece of gear and really putting it through its paces. I enjoyed it. I didn't have anything bad to say. Prior years, I've always worn the First Light Obsidian Foundry pants, which I'm a sucker for. I love them. I love the reinforced butt and the knee pads. It's great for glassing. It's great for water breaks. It's great when you're filtering water, setting up camp. I just have always liked those pants.
Yeah, my only complaint about that is because I basically used that Clime pant exclusively in 2023. I just wish that their side vents were not mesh and that it was actually like a much more breathable, or just remove the mesh.
And actually, now that I think about it, the front pockets are pretty poor. So
yeah,
when you're hiking, these pockets are like,
they're kind of useless.
More along the lines of like dress pants pockets, where they're super tight and shallow.
And they also ride really high.
Yeah, so they can kind of get into your waistband there.
Yeah. And also, like with the cargo pockets, there's that flap, that sewn-in flap. It's kind of a pain to.
It makes the zipper very difficult to use.
I've been very vocal about that type of design. I hate the Kuiu attack pants because of that. Kuiu attack pants are great pants. Hate the cargo pockets. This thing's kind of a similar design, and it's not going to change in my opinion. I still hate that design. With that said, to me, I used two pants toward 2024. I had an early season pant, hot weather pant, and I had a mid/late season, slightly warmer pant. And this is my early season pant. This is the Kuiu Tiburon. This is Kuiu's lightweight hot weather pant. And so all throughout the fabric, there's actually these micro holes where it allows you to breathe. And this pant is one of my favorite early season pants. I've used this pant for, I think this is my second Tiburon pant. The first one I bought was in 2019. And so for the past 6-7 years that I've been hunting early season August bear, the Kuiu Tiburon pants has been my go-to. And then late season this year, I've actually had this pant for a long time. I finally just used it last year. This is the Kuiu Talus hybrid pant. And this is, as the name implies, it's like a hybrid waterproof / active pants. So on the bottom down here, below the knee pad, This lower part down here is actually waterproof. So the design of this pant was you didn't need a gaiter, because the gaiter will wrap around the lower part. And so this is actually waterproof. And because it's waterproof and they're using a waterproofing fabric, they had to put fleece line here so that you don't have that awkward, nasty feel against like this, this rain gear type of feel.
Yeah.
Love these knee pads. These are non-removable knee pads. And my issue back then with these non-removable knee pads is when you wear gaiters, sometimes it'll like force this to ride up because the knee pad doesn't slide in. But last year I kind of just wore it and I just kind of forced myself to consciously not care about it, and it worked just fine. On top of that, again, to reiterate on that pant, the cargo pocket here has this flap. I hate it. It just does not work.
He hates the flap, folks.
I hate the flaps of the cargo pocket. I do like the side vents where it has an actual breathable vest, unlike
really
the
nice.
fleece line Clime pant from Tuo. Other than that, then again, if you look at the hand pockets right here, it's very similar to the Tuo where like the pockets ride so high and it's so tight that if you put a phone in this front pocket and you go to like hike, you're feeling every ounce of that phone on your leg. That's the problem with having these pants where they're designed to fit really well. It's just that when you're trying to put stuff in the pockets, it kind of annoys you.
Yeah.
But with that said, if I flip this pant out, you can see how it's all like taped up to make sure that water doesn't seep through. With that said, this pant is not waterproof, right? So at the back, the seat is waterproof. The front part of the leg is waterproof, but everything else is just your classic pant where it's breathable. But I really do like this pant. I bought this pant way back in 2021, and the first time I used it was our bike packing turkey trip.
Oh, really?
If you remember.
Yeah,
that was the only other time I've ever worn this pant. Pulled it out last year because it was just sitting in my closet, and I was like, man, that thing looks way too new. I need to go dirty it up. And I really liked it. So those are the two pants I wore in 2024, and I will most likely continue wearing them for 2025.
Nice. I feel like carrying rain pants has always been a flip a coin for me. Every time I decide not to, I regret it. And every time I do, I think, man, that's a lot of weight that I just have sitting in my pack that I'm not using. Yeah. This year, I kept them with me, and I used them a lot, and I really appreciated having them. Again, kind of along the same lines as the rain jacket, I went for the more heavy-duty, durable pant.
So this right here is the Tuo rain pant, which this is essentially the match to the jacket that we had just previously mentioned.
Yeah, and I liked them a lot. It does not have a full zip to zip off. However, it does have the zip up to the mid-upper thigh. So if you are going to take them off, it's a little bit clumsy and clattery, but it does still have a little bit. It kind of opens up and allows you to take them on.
And again, on this one, to reemphasize my point, they need to add a second zipper up top so that you can dump heat. Because
you don't want to zip up if you're going through wet. You don't want to unzip to dump heat from all the way from the bottom because that defeats the purpose of the rain pants.
So what you want and how you would design this, so you would have this zipper zip to the bottom to prevent this bottom piece from opening up, but at the same time have a top zipper where you can vent up here.
And this is a pocket.
This is a pocket. This is not the actual zipper.
Yeah.
And that's what I wish Tuo would have done. So on their jacket, they're missing a pit zip, and on their pants, they're missing a dual zipper system on the side zip so that you can dump heat, because the spot before Nate killed his bear last year was dumping rain. Me and Nate we wanted to get out of there. So we were hustling hard because it was raining. And we had packs and everything. So the packs were heavy, and with packs are heavy, you exert a lot more energy. I was sweating to death.
Yeah.
But I literally had no other option because I couldn't vent the jacket. I couldn't vent the pant.
Yeah.
And so it was either I was going to get wet from the rain or I was going to get wet from the sweat. And I got to the point where Nate was ditching me. I was like, I don't have time to take this stuff off. So I just bombed out of there. And so when it comes to rain gear, look for rain gear where it has, at least for what I would deem the best of the best, if you can only have one pair of jacket and pant. Look for pit zips on the rain jacket, and also look for a dual zipper side zip on the rain pant. Kuiu has it, Sitka has it, First Light has it.
Yeah.
Tuo's does not.
Yeah, it's just, you need to have rain gear that's going to accommodate activity.
Yes.
Because very rarely are you just, you do sometimes just sit there in your rain gear in the rain. We did that plenty as well, sitting just miserable in the rain. However, if you are going to be hiking, very mildly breathable, if at all, when you're wearing this Gore-Tex type rain gear, you're going to start sweating way faster.
And just to reemphasize on the point, don't fall into these things when you're researching rain gear, rain pants, rain jacket. Don't fall into the marketing of breathable.
Yeah, it's not.
There's no such thing as a breathable rain jacket or a rain pant. They might be better than competitors, but you're still gonna sweat.
Yes, 100%.
You cannot beat the ability to completely vent out your heat or your sweat.
Yeah.
So that's our rain gear that we use for 2024. I'm not sold on my rain system, which is essentially the Tuo system, so I'll probably have to do some jumping on that.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing out of everything that I am actively right now trying to swap out my system. Everything else is pretty dialed. Last, we run the same thing.
Yes, sir.
Look at us. We're like twinning for the most part. This is our Puffy pants. And this is the First Light Uncompadre Puffy pant. I've had mine for 3 years.
I think so. We got them about the same time.
Yeah, Nate bought his. I got a little jealous, and I was like, I'm going to go buy me one. And so I bought a Puffy pant. And when it comes to Puffy pants, I'm just going to tell you, if you've never experienced the comfort of a Puffy pant,
it's incredible.
You are missing out.
It's like a hug. It's like a warm hug.
Yep. And so obviously, as you can see with mine, the First Light logo sticker's kind of falling apart.
They've been well used. So these are synthetic pants. There's different types out there. There's synthetic. Stone Glaciers are down, and you can get into the whole argument of synthetic versus down and which one's better. I went with the synthetic because I thought anywhere that I'm wearing this, I feel like as a pant, it's going to be more exposed to rough surfaces. It's probably going to be more exposed to moisture. And in my experience, that's exactly what's happened. These things in Oregon, not this last year, but 2 years ago in 2023, I wore these, just got absolutely soaked, and they were able to completely dry out and be good to go in the morning with a little bit of the hot tent. The down's also a great option. Our buddy Tanner has the downs from Stone Glacier, and they just look so puffy and warm.
Yeah, the primary difference between synthetic and down is you buy down to save weight, and it's also warmer per gram of weight of down than synthetic. The reason why you buy synthetic is it's oftentimes better in wet environments because it will still keep you warm when it's wet. And on top of that, synthetic's cheaper.
Yeah.
The reason why I bought the First Light and Compadre is because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
It was like, cheaper relatively speaking. It's still expensive, but compared to the other options, this was the cheapest one. And I can't say enough good things about this Puffy pant. Ever since I bought it, I've really never looked back. I haven't really dabbled into any other.
They're great.
Down or
it's just a solid piece of equipment that any late season hunt will have.
It's got a full side zipper here, so you can completely remove the down pant without removing anything on your bottom. So you can put this on over your pant, take it off.
And you're okay with the full zippers here because you're not going to be hiking around in these. These will get you warm enough that even like 2022 late season whitetail, 8 degrees out, if you start hiking in these, you will be sweating very quick and want to take them off.
So again, like this is kind of just a no frills, just a piece of gear that just works, right? Like it's kind of like the Argali shelters. There's not much to pick a bone with. They just work.
Yeah.
And so I don't see myself changing this Puffy pant out. It's just a good piece of gear, and I do recommend the First Light and Compadre Puffy pant. With that said, that is, for the most part, what goes on our bodies for our tops and bottoms. Now we kind of go into the accessories. One thing that you do wear on top is blaze orange. Get the cheapest blaze orange vest you can find. Like the orange serves one purpose.
Walmart, Sportsman's Warehouse, they have like the orange mesh for $2 or $3, maybe $1.50, and it's light. It's the lightest on the market, and it's breathable because it's mesh, and it gives you your square inches of orange that you need.
You don't need to go buy a $150 Kuiu Guide blaze orange vest.
No.
Like the point of orange is to be seen as orange. Buy the cheapest one you can find that fits you well, and that's really the purpose of it. On top of that, a lot of times I will also wear a blaze orange hat. If it's cold enough, then I just wear this Onyx blaze orange beanie, or honestly any orange beanie that I can find.
Yep.
Pretty simple there. Don't overcomplicate that stuff. Gloves. This year, I've used a lot. I used Walmart Well, I used Walmart Rio Tree gloves because I couldn't find my my other gloves. And then this year I used the Kuiu Axis gloves because I lost all my gloves. So
this is why I don't carry gloves. I lose them all.
Funny story, like for our blacktail hunt with Colin and Jason in Oregon, I had a Kuiu glove in my right hand, or in my left hand, and then I had a Sitka glove in my right hand, and I had cut the fingertips off because they were starting to fall apart, but I wanted to squeeze the life out of those gloves, and so I used it, and then the night that Colin spotted that last hour buck, I had like took off my gloves and like I put them on the ground and I forgot about them because we never went back up to the knob because the next day Nate shot a buck just at camp, so we never even climbed up there. So I know where they are.
I also lost my gloves on that hunt.
So the point is, gloves serve one purpose, is to just keep that wind chill off. And the difference between the Kuiu gloves and the Walmart gloves that I picked up this year, I wouldn't.
Gloves are gloves.
Gloves are gloves.
For sure.
The biggest difference would be when you get into like mittens, like down mittens. Right. That's where the real deal comes in. But gloves, Walmart will serve you just fine. The one thing I will say about these higher end gloves is that they do fit better. They're not as loose. They're more ergonomic to your hand. For the vast majority of people,
yeah,
Walmart gloves will serve you just
I've
fine.
always worn like the Glummets, like it's got the fold back mitten portion, so you can kind of get a little bit of the mitten feel, but then you still have your trigger finger, or if you're archery hunting, you can still have your release.
Yep. So yeah, other than that, then I do have some down mittens that I have for 2024, but I hardly used it, which is why I'm not saying or bring it here. It's the Kuiu down Glummets, super down Glummets, but who really needs that? Not much people. Lastly, footwear. So I think, Nate, for both of us, we just use Darn Tough socks. This is the Darn Tough Hunter 1012 or something 2012 or something like that.
As long as it's Darn Tough, it works.
If it's Darn Tough, it works. And so pretty basic there. Now, when it comes to clothing, I think we've made it pretty clear that you don't need the top of the line of everything. But where you should spend your money is your foot.
So if you scroll,
good socks.
If you go way back to the beginning of this video where when we were talking about packs and Samong said this is the single piece of gear, I refrained from interrupting them and saying I think that it's tied with footwear.
Yeah.
But I firmly believe through experiences with bad footwear that a pack and a footwear are your two most important items on a hunt.
Yep.
Secondary to your weapon.
Yeah, I mean, you can argue footwear and pack first and second place.
Yeah.
You know, like they kind of at the top.
Yeah.
If your feet hurt, you're not going anywhere. If your pack sucks, you're not carrying anything with you in the backcountry, right?
Yeah.
Like they have their purpose, and I think your pack is very important, and your footwear is just as important.
Certainly.
So it starts with a good sock.
Yes.
Darn Tough socks are my favorite because they're merino wool, so they are very good at neutralizing odor, and they're also very comfortable. Merino
and they have
wool,
a lifetime warranty.
They do, and they're made right here in the USA.
Yeah.
So Darn Tough, take a look at them. They're expensive. They're like $20 to $25 a pair, which is expensive. But let me tell you right now, one good pair of socks does you way better than 6 pairs of cheap socks that cost the same at $25.
Oh, for sure.
You know, so because this year, 2024, I alternated between 2 pairs of Darn Tough socks. I alternated between $50 worth of socks, and it served me just fine. And they're still they've got a lot of life in them left.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So Darn Tough socks, that's where we start. Now we go to our boots, and you can see we only have one pair, one boot.
One boot each.
One boot each. So for my early season boot, and I've been using this for, I don't know, 3 seasons now, and this thing is at the end of its life. This is the Crispy Laponia Generation 1. I believe there's a...
Is it really?
This is the original Laponia.
Nice.
There's now a 3rd generation ever since I bought this boot. And this is probably one of my favorite boots of all time. The only gripe about it is I just wish that it was a little bit more stiff. I understand it's a lightweight boot, but you can still have a lightweight boot, with some more stiffness.
Yeah, sure.
But for what it's worth, $200-something, this was probably one of my favorite boots I've ever worn. And I'm kind of sad because I can't get another one because they discontinued the first one. I have heard mixed reviews about 2nd and 3rd generation, but everybody was just like...
Those were the go-tos.
The original Laponias were it. And yeah, it's seen better days. The sole's starting to come off. I have holes in it now. It's not waterproof anymore. This thing's probably seen close to about 2,500 miles, if I had to guess, over the years I put it through. That's my early season boot. Since this one's on its last leg, I will be in the market for early season lightweight boot.
This is my boot, my single boot. This is a Schnee's Beartooth 200 gram insulation boot. It's more of a late season boot. However, I'm a cold foot guy, so I would much rather have a little bit of insulation and have, going in, if you can't go buy 2 or 3 pairs of boots to transition through as the weather gets colder, which I'm not, I will just pick the boot that I want in the late season and just kind of deal with the hot feet in the early season. But this boot is this is my second round of these boots, and I just absolutely love them. I, for a long time, have had an issue with waterproof. People talk about waterproofing on boots, and people kind of have always talked about leather being the top of the top kind of for having waterproof boots, and that has just never been my experience. Whether that was the way that I prepped them and cared for them, or it was my leather care, I just never had great experience with long-term waterproofing of leather boots. I would have it great for like the first half of the season, or I'd use the Nick Wax or the spray, the silicone spray, and it would last me like maybe half a hunt. But if it was a wet hunt, by the end my feet were soaked. Yep. And if you get an insulated boot wet, it takes a lot to dry it out. Until this season, I kind of went off the normal path, I think, for at least what you read, and I went for just extreme waterproofing. So what I did here is I took seam seal, the same stuff that you do like seam sealing on tents with, or a patch repair on sleeping bags, and I seam sealed all of the seams on the boot. And then I actually got Snow Seal, which is it's been around for a long time. It's not a new technology or anything. It's a beeswax based boot leather waterproofing, where you heat up the boot with the leather to allow it to absorb this beeswax based rub. My feet stayed completely dry through the whole season. So whether or not that's the correct way to care for your leather boots or not, it worked, and that's all I can say about it.
Yeah. So I actually use the same boot, the Schnee's Beartooth 200 gram. That's my late season boot that I've been rocking since 2022. So I've been alternating between my early season Laponias, and then right around October, depending on how cold of an October we get, that's when I typically transition over to the Schnee's Beartooth. And it's been a good boot. I really have no complaints about that. Like Nate said, the leather stuff was new to me, so like I was like, why is my feet wet when this boot is essentially new? Well, it's because you really have to treat it properly, leather boots, for it to maintain its waterproofness. Yeah. And obviously you found a system that works for you, so I need to go do the same thing. So that's our boots. Last thing, gaiters. So this is what goes somewhat above your boot and right below your knee if you don't know what a gaiter is. I would classify them more as a necessity for the most part than a want. Yeah. Gaiters help prevent snow and debris from getting inside your boot, and they also help prevent your boot from getting wet because the gaiter is taking all of that wet stuff for your leg or your boot. I have been using the Stone Glacier SQ2 Alpine gaiters for about 5 seasons, and I have cut off the bottom boot strap because I hated that strap because it kept building snowballs. And ever since then, I think Stone Glacier has now updated their gaiters to where it's no longer that exposed paracord. They actually put this little piece of rubber type material around it to prevent it from building snowballs. Similar to this. Very similar to that. There's a lot to like about this gaiter, but again, this gaiter is kind of at the end of its life too. I have holes all over this gaiter, and it's just not. I just haven't been super sold on it. A gaiter should be a lot more durable than that, and I shouldn't have had as many issues as I've had with this gaiter. And so I've used the Peaks Equipment gaiter, the Stormcastle gaiter. I think those are probably the best gaiters that I have used so far.
Yeah, I've only ever owned one pair. I've had these for 5 years now. This is the First Light Brambler heavyweight gaiters. This gaiter's in pretty good shape. Its partner up in the house is not so much in great shape. And it has done me really well. The only gripe I have is the way that you tighten it has kind of the cinch, like stretchy band around the top, but then you can do additional tightening with this quick release system here, and it comes undone fairly easily. However, overall, the gaiters have kept my boots dry, have kept my legs dry, and done what a gaiter should do for multiple years.
So for the most part, that's our clothing system that runs us successfully from early season August bear hunting through our late season hunts in November, December, and obviously you throw spring turkey and spring bear in there, it'll cover it just fine. Last but not least, we're gonna talk about gadgets / miscellaneous items that we bring that some of it's not mandatory, but it's like a comfort item. We found it to be very helpful in the backcountry. So we've got just a table full of all these random items, and so we'll let Nate start from his side, and he can walk you through what he brings, and I'll end it with me over here.
Cool. This is a Ben's bug net. It's like half an ounce. It's great for the summer, like early August bear. Samong and I have found ourselves in some pretty high density mosquito situations. A bug net is great. Also came very handy when I was in Alaska. This is first aid kit for me, something that is not a luxury item and I think should be something that you are very familiar with your pack. A lot of people will go to the store, go to Rite Aid, buy the standard first aid kit. It's basically a glorified pack of Band-Aids and gauze, and it's not gonna do a whole lot if you get seriously injured. So whether you have one or not, looking into having a very capable first aid kit for large injuries that can happen in the backcountry, things that are truly the difference between life and death, is an important thing. This is actually a Mend It kit. It's a company I founded with my brother. I'm no longer part of that company, but the company is still alive and strong. It focuses more towards action sports and mountain biking, but it's very capable, comprehensive, small, lightweight 5-6 ounce kit for the backcountry. Highly usable. The orange part's a SAM splint for fractures, and it's kind of kept together with a tourniquet, which I think is something that should be in every hunter's backpack. You're doing a lot of stuff, highly fatigued, using a lot of sharp knives on big animals, not always in places you can see, in dark, in poor conditions, in steep terrain. It's kind of the perfect storm for a bad injury, and you don't want to be caught without a tourniquet. That's my high horse there. Here I've got a Goal Zero solar panel. This is not something that goes on every hunt with me, but if it's going to be a kind of a good weather hunt and I can ditch a few battery packs, this thing is awesome. Here I have the Argali sawtooth knife. This has been my go-to knife for this last year, and it has been fantastic. From turkey season all the way through bear to Oregon mule deer, this has been a really, really fantastic knife. This is a new addition. I haven't actually gotten to use it yet, but I'm excited to keep this with me in my pack. This is the MKC, the Montana Knife Company, and Worksharp collaboration for just for honing your blade in the backcountry. So one is ceramic, one is really high, I believe 800 grit. It kind of has preset angle guides for you. And this is just so you can quick touch up your knife if you're working through an elk or something in the backcountry. Great piece that I'm really excited to test out. Here, this is a Sea to Summit water bladder. I believe this is a 6-liter water bladder. We've gone through a couple different water bladders.
I had the MSR Dromelight.
Yeah.
But our problem with that was with the positioning of the valve, you couldn't get all the water out.
Yeah.
Which this solves it.
This solves it, and it's extremely rugged. So you could literally fill this thing with water and drop it on a rock, and it will not pop. It's an ounce or two more for that, but it's totally worth it for me, especially if you're doing high country
There's a lot
hunts.
of peace of mind when you're carrying that amongst all of your gear.
Oh,
and
completely.
It's filled up, and you don't have to worry about that thing bursting.
You can strap it to the outside of your pack.
Brush with it.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's a much better, this is the best water bladder that we have found. And when I say water bladder, I'm not talking about one where you drink out of. This is like
for
a
camp.
base camp water bladder.
So it's got the strap around it. You fill it up, you hang it at camp. Whether you are near water and you just want to have a stream of water close, or whether you're packing this water up a couple thousand feet to your camp that's above water, it's been great. Paracord, nothing to be said about it except have it, and it was like duct tape for the backcountry.
Yep.
Works for everything. This is something my buddy Tanner sold me on. It's kind of it is a luxury, and it's great. It's a little pop-up. It's also made by Goal Zero. It's a little pop-up lamp. You can charge it by USB-C, or it's got the solar panel on top. It's just nice for nights in the tent, especially late season where you have long nights, and you don't want to burn out your headlamp battery, this thing is great. You can turn it on low, lights up the tent, gives a little...
And you can hang it. That's the best part. You can hang it at the tip of the tent, and you have light in your tent.
Yeah, extremely lightweight, extremely compact. It's nice to have around, always keep it with me. This is my 10 Essentials bag. I'm a fairly standard 10 Essentials bag. I carry it in addition to my first aid kit. It's got a flint and steel on it. And then as far as water purification and boiling goes, this is a fairly standard setup. I've got a squeeze, a Sawyer squeeze. This is what I use for 90% of my water filtration. In my first aid kit here, or in my 10 Essentials kit, I added in iodine tablets. I've used those. We used those in 2021 when we were not able to find any really good clean water source. You can use them in addition with each other, or you can just use one or the other. Most of the time, I just use the Sawyer squeeze. And then jet boil. MSR, jet boil. There's a few different on the market. This one has served me well for, coming up on 10 years. And the little igniter still works. So
mine has never worked from day one.
That's my little claim to fame with this thing, is that for almost a decade now.
If you have a jet boil where the igniter works, you have a gem.
Yeah, they're kind of a 1 in a million.
Dear jet boil, fix your igniter.
And I'll turn it over to Samong for his gadgets.
Yeah, so just to clarify, a lot of the stuff that we're sharing here, it's not that this is just what I bring. A lot of times we actually overlap some of those. Some of the stuff I bring, he brings as well, vice versa. Trekking poles, this year we used the Argali Carbon X trekking poles. They're good trekking poles. They didn't break on us. One thing with the trekking poles is you can remove this top, and they actually sell some accessories. So like there's a rifle accessory where you can put your rifle.
Like a Y rest.
Yeah, like a rest, a rifle rest. You can use an adapter for your binocular. Mm-hmm. So it's like a little post right here, and you can have, essentially it's very similar to the Kestrel Blasting Systems monopod. And obviously, as Nate mentioned earlier, you can also use this as an extension to a center pole for one of the Argali shelters. Both of us use these trekking poles. The bottom piece, it does have a little bit more friction. I wish it was a little bit more smooth, but once you get it deployed, it works just fine. Headlamps, the both of us, we've been using the Phoenix, and personally for me, I have been using the HM60R. I always carry 2 headlamps. I think one of the worst things that can happen to you is you're stuck out in the backcountry and you don't have light. Yeah. And so I always carry 2 reliable headlamps. To me, Phoenix has just always been that brand. I've really haven't had any hiccups with Phoenix, so I've just stuck with them. Don't fix what's not broken.
The HM60R is also what I carry.
Yep, and it's very bright and it's rechargeable. So really again, nice. We have like solar panels. We have exterior power banks that we always are carrying. So like as soon as that dies out, plug it in, charge it overnight, you're good to go. That's our headlamps. Another thing that I think it's so nice to have, the Crazy Elk tag wallet, specifically the Samong Yang Outdoors branded tag wallet. I'm just kidding, but the Crazy Elk, this is essentially a little zippered pouch where you can put your tags and your licenses in, and they come with reusable zip ties. So you put your tag inside the zipper, you use these zip ties to attach it to your carcass, the deer head, whatever it is. Once you get it home, transportation's over, just take off the zip tie.
These things are legitimately fantastic.
They are great.
They're amazing.
It's a genius idea. And so it's reusable. And the advantage of using a tag wallet over electrical tape is if a game warden comes and checks on you, if you have your tag wrapped in electrical tape, you're going to have to unravel the entire electrical tape just to show them the tag. Whereas if a game warden checks you in the tag wallet, just unzip it, pull your tag out, show them, put it back in, you're good to go. That's one of my favorite pieces of gear. You can find this at the Crazy Elks website or my website, syoutside.com. Zoleo, this is our satellite phone. This is how we communicate with family, friends, loved ones back at home when we are out and about and we don't have cell service. A lot of the hunts that Nate and I do, we're out where there's no phone service. So the way we communicate with our family and friends is through satellite technology, which I have also used the Garmin InReach, but I've really just leaned towards the Zoleo because the Zoleo connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and the Zoleo has an app, and the interface on the Zoleo app, I just much prefer that over the Garmin.
And just another side note about Zoleo that's really nice is one thing that was a barrier to me getting back when it was just Garmin and reaching the market. It's these Iridium network devices. One thing that was a barrier is I was like, I don't really want to pay 40, 50, 60 bucks a month when I may be using it 2 or 3, maybe 4 months out of the year. Zoleo allows you to pause your account anytime you want in the off season and pay like $4 a month.
Yeah.
And so it's basically a free device, more or less, in the off season. And then as soon as you're ready to use it, you can unpause, reactivate your account, and I think that's just really valuable. It takes away that barrier of people not wanting to like have some back, kind of that additional level of either backcountry peace of mind or safety or security due to financial reasons.
We've had some like satellite GPS hiccups with it, where like the GPS is in the wide open, but it's not picking up any, or the Zoleo is in the open, but it's not picking up any GPS signals. For the most part, it's been working pretty well.
Yeah, usually due to software updates once you get back in service.
So that's the one thing you always have to do before you go out, like make sure your Zoleo app is up to date, or else you're gonna run into some software issues like that.
Yeah.
Regardless of who you are, a satellite phone communicator is a must, especially if you consistently hunt in places where you do not have a cell phone service.
Yeah.
Another thing before we move on is it does have an SOS button. So like the moment something goes wrong, press that, and it's a lot more streamlined versus having to go through all these hoops of getting the support or for whoever's coming to your aid, One thing I will touch on, Nate touched on his knife. This year I was fortunate enough to test out a Montana Knife Company knife. This is the Elkhorn, which is Remy Warren's signature series knife. And I don't want to just hop on the hype train for the sake of hopping on the hype train, but this knife, this knife is so good. I love it.
It's incredible.
It feels good in the palm. And the biggest thing I like about this knife is how tall or wide, depending on how you look at it, the blade of this knife is. So I'm not talking about long, I'm talking about height, how tall it is. What a tall blade like this allows me to do is when I'm trying to follow a certain cut, having this blade being so tall, it allows me to have a nicer guide along that piece of muscle. Or for example, like the back strap, when you're following along the back strap, taking the back strap off, having this side of the blade just sit on that bone allows you for a nicer, cleaner cut. And I think it just helps eliminate some of those ugly random cuts that you accidentally put into the meat itself. This knife right here is top 2 knife. The other knife that I would put right up there is the Benchmade Raghorn knife that I used in 2022. This knife, the Montana Knife Company Elkhorn and the Benchmade Raghorn, those two are probably my 2 favorite knives. And I've used a lot of them. I used the Argali knives, solid knives. Obviously, the Argali knives come at a lower price point, so you have to take that into account. The Elkhorn comes in like a $300. The Raghorn from Benchmade is like $400, which it's very expensive. But in terms of just usability, functionality, man, this knife and the Benchmade Raghorn are solid knives. On top of our knives, we don't have it here, but our kill kits, our game bags. We were using the Argali game bags. I don't know where I put mine, but
you can pan over them.
Yeah, the Argali game bags are my favorite game bags. They're really lightweight, and the biggest thing I like about them is they wash the blood off really easy.
Very well.
I've used other game bags, Black Ovis, for example. Their game bags are great. They're heavier, like really heavy, compared to the Argali, and the blood stains. Man, they do not come off.
You get white game bags once.
Yeah, my Black Ovis sacks are like pink.
Yeah.
And they've been like that ever since I've used them once. I do like the Argali game bags. And then I guess last thing on this table is this little guy right here. This is the Kestrel Glassing Systems rear rest. So the point of this is to eliminate the need for a sandbag when you go to shoot your rifle. So when you go to shoot your rifle, a lot of times you will use your hand as a rest to control the butt of your stock or a sandbag, or you can use the Kestrel Glassing Systems rear rest, and you can adjust the height by squeezing on it like you would a sandbag, and you can adjust the height of it. And obviously that's you do that and then you take your shot. I told John this in the past. I just wish that John would put some type of rubber on the top here, because right now it's all just plastic or whatever material he's using. So like sometimes like it'll slide back and forth on your stock, which isn't good if you're trying to maximize stability. I've also told John that I would like a little bit more friction between the two pieces here, so that if you put it here, you just know that it's not going to accidentally splay out the legs by itself. Because I've had it happen before, just because they're being held by this one little screw right here. But with that said, that covers the vast majority of what Nate and I used in 2024. Not everything, but I think we've covered everything that's worth mentioning.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It also covers what most people have been asking us about. So all of these items will be listed in the description below if you're interested in any of them. Discount codes will be provided in the description below as well to save you some money if we have a discount code for you to save in that specific brand or company or item. Again, that's 2024. I do these once a year. Hopefully those answered the questions that you have regarding my gear. And Nate and I were excited to get 2025 going. We're going to get season rolled out, get our gear dialed, and we will follow up with 2025 with another gear dump like this next year. That said, thanks for watching. See you in the next one.
See you guys later.